Kiss Me Baby One More Time, a sweet romantic comedy. Maple Creek Romantic Comedy, Book 2. Written by Cindy Ray Hale. Narrated by Mari B. and John Brattin. Copyright 2020 by Cindy Ray Hale. All rights reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means, including informational storage and retrieval systems, without written permission from the author, except for the use of brief quotations in a book review. Created with vellum. To my sister-in-law, Melissa Bloomfield, who totally gets Chapter 17.
Chapter 1. Taylor throws all these parties, but he can't actually get a girl to agree to settle down with him, Dylan teased, leaning against one of Taylor's granite countertops. Noah howled with laughter, and a few of the other firefighters joined in from where they stood, crowded around the island of Taylor's spacious kitchen. Taylor felt his cheeks growing warm. Just because I haven't gotten serious with anyone doesn't mean I can't find someone. He'd spent so many years working to become an orthopedic surgeon, he hadn't had time for a relationship. "Why don't you prove it to us, then?" Dylan challenged him. "How am I supposed to do that?" Taylor asked. "Get a girlfriend," his best friend Will said, glancing across the room at his fiancée, Layla. She stood in the living room with Onyx, the maid of honor in Layla and Will's upcoming wedding. "If I did it, you can too." "I don't think he can," Dylan said. "There's a reason he's been single all this time." "And what reason would that be?" Taylor tried to keep the defensiveness from his voice. "Look, Taylor," Dylan said, "don't take this the wrong way. You're a great friend, and you're awesome at what you do, but you're terrible with the ladies." Taylor crossed his arms over his chest. "What's that supposed to mean?" "You are kind of awkward," Chad, another one of Will's groomsmen, said, agreeing with Dylan. "Let me give you an example," Dylan said. "Remember in 3rd grade when we were playing hide-and-seek and you were counting to 100? "Yeah, I remember. You guys kept flicking my ear when I was counting. After a while, I felt you guys stop, and someone tapped me on the shoulder." "Yep. You remember what you did next?" Noah asked with a chuckle. "I remember." No, Will interjected. "Let me tell the story. I was watching from my hiding place. Amy Scott, the prettiest girl in 3rd grade. Remember her? We all had a crush on her. She was the one tapping you on the shoulder, and you turned around with your eyes still closed and hit her in the face so hard she ended up with a fat lip. And you, my friend, were given a dish of awkward pie," Dylan said. "Come on. That was 3rd grade. I've picked up some game since then." "Yeah, right. How do you have game if you don't have a girl?" Chad asked. "Sometimes the truth hurts, buddy." Dylan lightly punched him on the arm. He refused to let Dylan's interpretation of reality become the truth. "It's not the truth." "Prove it," Dylan repeated. Taylor puffed his chest out. "Fine, I will." "How?" Dylan taunted. "By getting a girlfriend," Taylor said. "Let's make it official," Dylan said. Taylor felt his cheeks heating up. What was he getting himself into? "You mean like a bet?" "Exactly." "What are the stakes?" "The loser has to babysit my sister's kids. She has 5 kids, 5 and under. And believe me, you don't want to lose. She has twins, too. They're 2.5. One of them has gastric issues with chronic diarrhea." Dylan looked like he was about to gag just talking about it. "Explosive chronic diarrhea. My sister calls those diaper changes a 5-wiper and a bath." Taylor wasn't looking forward to that. He didn't have much experience with children other than the few kids who came through his office as patients. "What makes you think your sister will let me watch her kids anyway?" "If you lose, I'll go over there with you," I plan on watching you struggle with those kids. But just to be safe, I'll clear it with my sister first. I'm sure she won't mind a doctor babysitting her kids." "This is too good," Noah said, rubbing his hands together. "Also, you have to find a girlfriend by—" Dylan paused like he was thinking. Then he snapped his fingers and pointed at Taylor. "By the time Will and Layla get married. That only gives me 2 months. That's plenty of time. Unless you don't think you can find a girlfriend by then." Taylor felt his cheeks heat up. He was sick of Dylan's teasing. He'd made it through medical school. Surely he could handle something as simple as finding a girl to date him. He was an attractive guy. "I can get a girlfriend right now." He didn't stop to think. He didn't want to talk himself out of anything. He just walked across the room, straight to where Layla stood talking with her gorgeous friend, Onyx Sharp. "Onyx, can I talk to you for a minute?" She turned around to face him, her blonde hair cascading over her shoulders in waves. "What's up, Taylor?" "I'll just be over by Will," Layla said, and walked back toward the kitchen. "I was wondering—" "Yes?" This was a lot harder than he thought it would be. What was he thinking, coming over here to talk to Onyx? He was pretty sure she hated him. She was always glaring at him like he was the enemy, although he couldn't figure out what he'd ever done to her. Goodness, her eyes were beautiful and blue. A guy could get lost in eyes like that, just like he was right now. Is there something you wanted, Taylor?" He felt a strong pull of chemistry toward her. Did she feel it too? Time stood still. She ran a hand through her hair, and it seemed to move in slow motion. She looked up at him, their eyes locking, and her lips parted, almost like she was giving him an invitation. And he did what any red-blooded male would do in such a moment with such a gorgeous woman in front of him. He bent down and kissed her. She should have slapped him, pushed him away, screamed in horror. But she didn't. Instead, she kissed him back. Did that mean she wanted him to kiss her? That he'd gotten away with randomly kissing the most beautiful woman in the room? These kinds of things never happened to him. He was the studious guy who always made straight A's in school and paid his taxes on time. He'd never tried to do something so scandalous. It was completely out of character for him. Maybe that was the point. He was tired of being the boring, predictable guy in Maple Creek. This was the most rash, spontaneous thing he'd ever done, and it felt exhilarating. Onyx wrapped her arms around his neck and stepped close to him. She was all around him, and she smelled exotic, like incense in far-off places he had only dreamed of visiting. Kissing her was a journey, and it left him feeling heady. If this was what kissing Onyx was like, he couldn't believe he'd waited this long to give it a try. He'd kissed other girls, but it had never been like this before. This breathless experience. He'd only approached Onyx to ask her to go on a date, but somehow it had turned into this amazing kiss. He stepped back, and she slid her arms from behind his neck, trailing her fingers down his chest, causing him to shudder beneath her touch. "Onyx, what was that for?" she whispered. That was when he noticed that the room had gone silent. He raised his gaze from her gorgeous face and looked over to where his buddies stood in the kitchen. All eyes were on him. Dylan's mouth was hanging open in shock. "I'm sorry, I don't know what got into me," Taylor mumbled. "Don't apologize." "Would you like to go out sometime?" Taylor asked. "Is this your way of asking most girls out?" Onyx said. No, just you." Onyx laughed lightly. "You don't want to go out with me, Taylor. You may think you do, but you don't." "Why not?" Taylor asked. She smiled sweetly up at him. "Because we're nothing alike." Taylor scowled. "How do you know? We've barely talked." "It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that we're incompatible. You're a good kisser, though. I'll give you that." Disappointment lanced through him. "That's it? You're fine with kissing me, but you won't go on a date with me?" She patted his chest, almost like she would to the sight of a dog who had been a good boy. "You got it, baby. We probably shouldn't kiss again, though. I liked it too much, and that's just no good." She turned away from him like the conversation was over. "Wait a second." He grabbed her arm. "Why do you think we're incompatible?" She looked up at him like he had a screw loose. "Are you dense?" "I don't think so. Is there something I'm missing?" "You're a doctor." She said it like it was the most obvious thing on the planet. "So?" She rolled her eyes. "In case you hadn't noticed, I'm not a fan of westernized medicine." "Going on a date with me would break some kind of moral code for you?" "No, silly. It's nothing like that. But you wouldn't want to hear my opinions of doctors, so let's just put it that way." "I see." Taylor wasn't sure what to say to her next. Everything he'd worked toward his entire life was against her belief system. "We shouldn't waste our time. Besides, it would be awkward." He couldn't believe his ears. "Okay." His eyes shifted back to the kitchen where his buddies stood, scrutinizing him. The looks of anticipation on their faces were obvious. "But do me a favor, don't mention the A word to the guys over there." "The A word?" Her brow crinkled in confusion. "Awkward." "Oh, no," she said sarcastically. "Nothing about this little exchange has been awkward. I get kissed randomly all the time, especially in front of all my friends." "I'm just gonna go now." He walked back to his buddies in defeat. She called out to his back. "It's been fun, Taylor." "The suspense is killing us," Dylan said. "What was that?" Taylor shrugged. "What happened? Are you two going on a date?" Noah asked. "That looked like it went well. She didn't slap you." "Baby steps. First a kiss, then I'll ask her out on a date." "What?" Dylan sputtered. "Oh, yeah. I always kiss girls before I ask them on dates. I have a much better chance of them saying yes that way. It weeds out all the bad ones." Taylor had no idea what he was even saying anymore. "You're nuts." "Like I said, baby steps." Taylor smiled at Dylan. "You'd better get a pair of rubber gloves, because you're about to be changing some dirty diapers."
Chapter 2. Onyx and her roommate Sully walked in the door of their apartment after the party at Taylor's. "What was up with Taylor kissing you tonight?" Sully had long, jet-black hair. She usually kept it up in a ponytail or a messy bun, but tonight she had it long and straight. "I have no idea what came over him. He just walked up to me and kissed me with no warning." "That's weird. Why do you think he would do that?" "I don't know. He's a funny guy." "You weren't exactly backing away," Sully pointed out. Yeah, about that." Onyx's face warmed up. "You know it would never work out between us. It was just a kiss, nothing else." "It didn't look like just a kiss," Sully insisted. "There was something more between you." Onyx couldn't deny it. She'd felt a strong emotion pulse through her when she'd kissed Taylor. It was like nothing she'd ever experienced before. That was why she couldn't let it happen again. She didn't want to get involved with someone so different from her. She hung her purse on the hook inside her closet door and took a seat on the couch. Sully took a seat next to her, flicking her ebony hair over her shoulder. "You're not responding to that?" "I don't know what to tell you." "Why do you think he kissed you?" "I don't know. He said he wanted to go on a date with me." Sully clapped her hands together like it was the best news she'd ever heard. Ooh, really? This is all so exciting. When are you two going out? We're not. Why not? I told him no. Onyx, why would you do something like that? Taylor is the most eligible bachelor in all of Maple Creek. He's a doctor, for Pete's sake. That's exactly the problem. I can't date a doctor. Onyx crossed her arms and glared at Sully, daring her to challenge her. Sure you can. He's a great catch. I don't care about that. I want someone who's great for me. You know I'm into alternative healing methods. Taylor and I are from different worlds. Sully rolled her eyes. Like no one's ever made a relationship work when they're from different worlds. Take my grandparents, for example. My grandfather was from Poland and my grandmother was from Kansas. He could barely speak English, and they figured it out. In fact, they've been married for 60 years now. Good for your grandparents. But that was them. This is me. I have no desire to start something with a doctor. I don't even have health insurance. If I get sick, I use natural methods. You know this about me. One of these days, you're going to get sick, and you'll realize that you need to go to the doctor just like the rest of us. Sully picked up a box of cookies she'd left on the coffee table earlier that day. She dug around inside and fished out a cookie. I don't eat garbage like that, and I don't get sick. I haven't been to the doctor since I was a kid. Sully gave her an exasperated look. I run an ice cream shop. Junk food is what I'm best at. Onyx made a face at her. Don't give me that condescending look. I wasn't being condescending. Onyx slipped her feet out of her ballet flats. If you ever tried ice cream, maybe you'd crack a smile once in a while. Sully shoved another cookie in her mouth. They weren't even the good kind. She'd bought some off-brand that was full of preservatives. Not that the brand name version was any better. Onyx stretched her legs out to rest on the edge of the coffee table. I eat ice cream all the time. Sully dusted the cookie crumbs off her hands. You can't call that non-dairy stuff you eat ice cream. It doesn't count. Have you ever tried it? Some of it's really good. Onyx wiggled her toes. It felt good to be free of those shoes. I tried your avocado ice cream. It just tasted wrong. That stuff's my favorite. You have weird taste buds. One of these days I'm going to have to teach you what real food is. No thanks. Then I'll just end up at the doctor. And then you'll have no reason to turn Taylor down. See, I just solved so many of your problems. And you'll end up with ice cream and an attractive man. Sully laughed at her own cleverness. Wait, you think Taylor's attractive? Sure, you don't? I guess. You guess? Sully hooted. Do you have eyes in your head? The guy's a hottie McHottie. I'd break my leg just to get him to examine it for me. That's just stupid. You know he's a surgeon, right? The guy gets paid to cut people open. He'd probably convince you to get some expensive surgery to help him fund his new sports car. It's not a crime to want to be paid for your work. Doctors deserve to earn a living, too. I just can't stand Taylor. You sure seemed to stand him earlier. Yeah, I had a weak moment. What's your problem with him? My mom had a booth for her crystal shop in the Maple Creek Fall Festival for years, and she was in line to sign up for a spot. She had to step out of line to grab her wallet from the car. When she came back, Taylor had taken the last spot. Sully gasped in mock horror. How dare he? Onyx made a face. I feel like you're making fun of me. That's because I am. Well, now my mom can't put her crystal shop in the fall festival. I'm actually really upset about it, Onyx pouted. I can tell. Sully munched on another cookie. I don't know how you can eat all those cookies and not gain a pound. I'd probably be huge if I ate as many snacks as you do. Sully shrugged. I have a really fast metabolism. It runs in my family. And women everywhere probably hate you for it. But then I sell them ice cream and they stop hating me. Because ice cream equals joy. That's why you're grumpy all the time. I'm not grumpy. I'm just... She couldn't think of the right words. She just saw so much wrong with the world that she wanted to fix. She wanted to make it a better place. But there were too many idiots messing everything up. That was where the grumpiness came from. I'm just passionate. Sully snorted. You sure put your passionate side on display for all of us tonight. Very funny. I'm not saying it was a bad thing. It's about time you move on to another guy. What's that supposed to mean? I mean that you're still, you know. Sully gestured with her hands like that was supposed to clarify things for Onyx. Onyx crossed her arms over her chest. No, I don't know. I'm still... What? You're still hung up on Wyatt. What? Onyx's mouth fell open. I am not. Her relationship with Wyatt had been the worst nightmare of her life. That was saying something, after all she'd been through with her dad leaving her mom when she was young. Her mom's crystal shop had kept a roof over her head throughout her teen years. That was why it meant so much to her. Sure you are. That's why you won't date anymore. It's like you're hoping Wyatt will magically change and come back to you, so you can have your happily ever after. Onyx felt Sully's words hit her like a punch to her gut. Was that what she'd been doing all this time? Why she never gave another guy a chance? Wyatt made everything seem magical. Until it wasn't. Onyx sighed. Until it wasn't. I'm glad you're not in that relationship anymore. Me too, but you're right. There's this tiny part of me that's hanging on to the hope that it'll change. But deep down, I know he never will. Onyx grabbed her favorite blanket and draped it over her lap, running her hands across the plush surface. He got controlling. I think he was grooming me at first. Didn't you say he acted like all your favorite things were his favorite things, too? Onyx nodded. At first, I thought I'd met my soulmate. It was like every word he'd said was exactly what I'd wanted to hear. I fell for it. Hard. Turns out, he was lying to me the entire time. The whole thing was just an act so he could get his claws into me. And boy, did he. Apparently, he still does. Sully cocked her head to the side, twisting a strand of dark hair around her pinky finger. How's that? I keep having flashbacks of the time we were together, when everything was perfect between us. Those memories seem to have this glowy edge to them. It's hard to explain. It's like every memory from those beginning days has this golden sheen to them. Onyx shook her head. I don't know. Does that make sense? That's called being in love, my dear. Yeah, but it was one-sided. He wasn't really in love with me. It was all an act. My therapist explained it to me. Wyatt is most likely a sociopath. That means he isn't capable of love. It was really hard for me to accept when she first explained it to me, but I think it's sinking in a little bit. I think it would be really good for you to try out another relationship to help you see that not all guys are like him. But what if I just attract another guy like Wyatt? I've heard of girls who end up in relationship after relationship with the same type of abusive guy. You've been going to therapy, right? Yeah. You're doing your part to fix whatever may be broken inside of you. Eventually, you'll be able to spot the warning signs early on. Then you'll be smarter next time. Or you'll get healthy enough that you won't attract that kind of guy to begin with. And I've been working to heal whatever hold Wyatt had on me. but this kind of inner work can take a long time. What are you doing beyond therapy to heal what happened with Wyatt? I've been doing some positive journaling and meditating with crystals. Sometimes I imagine myself breathing out the stress and negativity from the relationship. That seems to help a lot. How do you meditate with crystals? There are all kinds of ways to do it, but I usually just hold them in my hands and imagine my negativity being poured into them. That's pretty cool. It helps me feel calm, so that's what matters the most. It's good you found something that helps you. I've worked hard to heal from Wyatt. That was why it hurt when Sully said she thought Onyx was still hung up on Wyatt, because she'd tried for so long to move on from that relationship. You've healed a lot from what happened with your parents' divorce, too. I'm still a work in progress. It's a long journey.
Chapter 3. Taylor dipped a French fry in ketchup and took a bite. The mushroom Swiss burger at Dixie's Tavern was one of his favorite things to eat. This corner booth used to be the spot where he and Will always hung out, but now Will was too busy spending time with Layla, leaving Taylor to hang out with Dylan and Noah instead. Taylor didn't mind Noah so much, but Dylan didn't seem to be the greatest friend. "Did you get Onyx to agree to go on a date with you yet?" Taylor grabbed his burger and took a huge bite of it before answering. He hoped that by chewing his food, he'd stall enough that Dylan might get distracted by something Noah would say in the meantime. No such luck. Dylan and Noah stared him down expectantly until Taylor had finished chewing and swallowed his mouthful of burger. "I haven't asked her again." "It's been a week. What are you waiting for?" "I've been busy with work." Taylor knew it was a lame excuse, but it was all he could come up with in the spur of the moment. He took another bite of his burger. "Well, today's your lucky day." Noah's eyes were on the door. Taylor twisted around to see what he was looking at. Onyx had just walked in with her roommate, Sully. Taylor groaned. "What's wrong, Taylor? Too worried you might be too awkward to get Onyx to go out with you?" Dylan teased. Taylor figured Dylan thought he was trying to be funny, but he was just coming off like a jerk. Taylor wasn't going to let him see how much his words affected him. He finished his burger and fries and stood up. "I'll be back soon." He crossed the room to where Onyx and Sully were settling down at a table. What was he thinking? How was he supposed to talk to Onyx when Sully was right there? It was always much scarier to talk to a woman when she was flanked by her friends. He should have waited until Sully got asked to dance, but he could be waiting all night for an opportunity like that. Maybe he would be better off finding a different girl, one who wouldn't be so quick to turn him down. But he couldn't get that kiss out of his head. It had replayed in his mind 1,000 times since last Friday night. He wasn't sure he could handle a rejection from her. Maybe he should change course and act like he was going to the bathroom instead. No, he needed to do this now. Stop chickening out. A country song began playing, a slow song that was perfect for dancing. He approached their table. "Hey, Onyx, do you want to dance?" "You again?" Sully beamed up at him. "She would love to dance with you." Sully nudged Onyx's arm. "Come on, silly." Onyx sighed. "Fine." Ouch. He could tell she really wanted nothing to do with him. He really could have picked a different girl who wasn't so eager to reject him. But he was a glutton for punishment. Onyx stood up, and he led the way to the dance floor. As they walked out there, an idea formed in his mind. Maybe he needed to be honest with Onyx. She might be willing to help him out. They reached the middle of the dance floor, and he took her hand. It felt warm and soft in his. His heart sped up as he remembered her putting her arms around his neck when he'd kissed her. He pulled her toward him as they began swaying together with the music. "I have a confession to make." "Yeah? What's that?" Onyx asked. "I made a bet right before I went over to kiss you." "A bet?" Confusion crossed her features before anger unfurled there. Did you make a bet to see if you could kiss me without me slapping you? No, it was nothing like that. Then what was your bet about? Dylan and the guys were teasing me about never getting a girlfriend. I'm sick of it. So you walked over to me and kissed me to prove some kind of point? Hurt clouded her features. This wasn't going the way he'd hoped. The last thing he wanted was to hurt Onyx. I'm not some sort of trophy. That's not why I kissed you, he blurted. I was coming over to ask you on a date. The truth is, I got caught up in the moment. I wasn't planning on the kiss. It happened unexpectedly. To be honest, it felt right. That was why I did it. It was nice, Onyx agreed. But you aren't interested in going on a date with me. I'm not. I'm only dancing with you out of peer pressure right now. You don't want to dance with me because I'm a doctor. Yep. You know, there are a lot of girls out there who want a doctor to ask them out. I'm not one of them. I get that, but what if we pretended to date? To get these guys off my back. You still haven't told me what the bet was about, Onyx pointed out. I have to get a girlfriend before the wedding. You and I have to spend some time together anyway, since you're the maid of honor and I'm the best man. You seem to be the obvious choice. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend. Isn't that cheating? Look, I'm desperate. I can perform a complicated surgery, but I'm not good at this dating thing. What was he saying? He would never get a girl by telling her how desperate he was. He had the worst game on the planet. That sounded really bad, didn't it? Onyx smiled at him. You're fine. It's kind of cute, actually. What do you say? Want to be my fake girlfriend? Onyx laughed at him. You're actually serious about this? Dylan is a jerk. I need to prove to him I can get a girl on my own so he stops teasing me. Sorry, Taylor. I'm not the girl for the job. Why don't you ask Sully? She thinks you're hot. I bet she'd help you out. I don't know. He looked across the room to where Sully sat alone, sipping on a drink. She was a pretty girl, but he didn't feel any chemistry with her. Nothing like what he'd felt with Onyx. He couldn't deny it. Every moment he'd spent with her, he'd felt drawn to her in a way he couldn't explain. You don't look excited about the idea? It feels lame to have to fabricate a relationship. I can talk to her for you. Onyx thought she was being helpful, but she was only making things worse. No, I need some time to figure out what I want to do. Okay, but if you change your mind, let me know. There wasn't much chance of that happening. Why don't you want to do it? We're too different. It's a fake relationship, so you won't have to worry about that. Or are you worried about your image? You don't want to be seen with a doctor. It's not that. Onyx hedged. Then what is it? I have trust issues. You wouldn't understand. Because of your relationship with Wyatt. You know about that? We live in Maple Creek. I have a lot of older patients who come in my office who like to talk. Onyx scowled. People are going around town talking about me? What are they saying? Mostly that you had a rough breakup with Wyatt. I should know better to think that I have any sort of privacy in this town. You really should. I love Maple Creek, but I get tired of the gossip mill churning sometimes. What do you have to hide? From what I understand, you weren't the one with the issues in the relationship. I would tell you that my life isn't any of your concern, but it seems too late for that. I said the wrong thing again, didn't I? Onyx frowned. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to say the wrong thing sometimes, I apologize in advance for anything else I say that's moronic. Thank you, Taylor. The song ended, and Taylor walked to the edge of the dance floor with Onyx. I feel like I made a complete fool of myself. Onyx smiled at him. It's actually kind of cute. So you're saying I did? Onyx laughed. Be yourself, Taylor. I'm not sure that's the best option here. You're a smart guy. You'll figure it out. Thanks for the vote of confidence. You never told me. What happens if you don't find a girlfriend by the wedding? I have to babysit Dylan's sister's kids. Onyx's mouth quirked up at the corners. The one with the toddler who poops too much? You know about that? Onyx shrugged. She shops at my mom's crystal shop. Well, I don't have much babysitting experience. There's no way I can lose this bet. You'll figure it out. There's really no way you can help me out. He didn't think there was, but he figured it didn't hurt to ask again. I told you, ask Sully. She's perfect girlfriend material. And she has all the ice cream you could ever dream of.
Chapter 4. Onyx finished measuring the bride standing on the pedestal in the middle of her wedding dress shop. All done. We'll get those alterations finished up, and you can pick up your dress in a couple of weeks. Thanks, Onyx. The bride stepped down, and Onyx went to put the dresses away that were hung up in the bride's dressing room. The bell on the door of the shop rang, and Onyx emerged from the dressing room with her arms laden with wedding gowns. She peeked over the mound to see her mom walk inside. Hey, Mom. I'm just putting these dresses away. Want some help? Her mom asked. Sure. Onyx peeled the top 2 dresses off of the stack and handed them to her mom. Her mom peered at the tag. These are size 6s? Yep. Her mom had helped her enough times that she didn't need to be shown where anything was anymore. How's the crystal shop today? Slow. I left Amber in charge. I needed a break. I've been worried about you lately. Her mom was getting up in years. She'd been in her early 40s when she'd had Onyx. Have you thought about letting Amber take over the shop permanently? You know I can't do that. Her mom chided. You'll eventually want to retire. I don't want to think about it. That shop sure has been good to us over the years. Onyx hung a vintage lace dress back up. That dress is gorgeous. I know, right? The bride said it wasn't for her, though. I would love to see you wearing one of those. I know, Mom. I thought I was there with Wyatt, but it didn't happen that way for us. Thank goodness. Wyatt would have been a terrible husband. A nightmare, Onyx agreed. I felt like I was suffocating by the end of that relationship. I got a bad vibe from him right away, but I had to let you discover that path on your own. As much as it hurt, I'm glad I figured it out. Would you say you're still in love with him? I don't think so. I think I'm in love with the persona he created for me. I see. Amber told me she saw you kissing Taylor Roberts at the party last week. Why didn't you tell me you were dating him? I'm not dating him. That kiss came out of nowhere. It caught me off guard. Can you see yourself with him in the future? No way. He's a doctor. That doesn't mean you can't still have a happy relationship with him. I would have thought you, of all people, would understand. You're the one who taught me to believe in alternative medicine. Yes, but if Taylor is a good man, he could still make you happy. It might be good for you to broaden your horizons. Onyx hung up the last dress from the group. I can't believe you're saying this. I want you to settle down. At the very least, it would be good for you to date someone new to get your mind off what happened with Wyatt. Isn't it enough for me to heal on my own? Of course. But you've been healing on your own from Wyatt for a couple of years now. I think it could be good for you to branch out and try something different. Is this a psychic reading? Her mom laughed. No, just a bit of motherly advice. I guess that's allowed. It had been interesting growing up with a psychic for a mom. She never got away with anything. Her mom could always tell when she was lying. Her mom was the most intuitive, pure-hearted person she'd ever met. Onyx would do anything for her. They'd stuck together through the rough years after her dad left, and her mom was struggling to keep her little crystal shop open so she could put food on the table. I came over here to see if you wanted to have dinner over at my house tonight. You could have called. I know you don't keep your phone on you at work. Anyway, I was driving by the shop and I thought I'd come say hi. Well, I'd love to come over for dinner. What are we having? Sautéed Brussels sprouts and quinoa. Sautéed Brussels sprouts and quinoa. That sounds delicious. Onyx's mom taught her to eat vegan from a young age. Back when she was growing up, it made her stand out as a bit of a freak. But now it wasn't that out of the ordinary. Even so, in Maple Creek it was unusual to be vegan. As the daughter of a psychic and a crystal shop owner, Onyx was used to differing from everyone else in town. Somehow, she'd still found her place among the townsfolk. Onyx closed up her shop for the day and got into her little hybrid car. She followed her mom to the little cottage where she'd grown up. Ivy covered half the stone walls. The house looked like it belonged in a storybook. She used to joke that her mom was the witch in the storybook house who made potions. Her mom was one of the good guys, but she did come up with some strange herbal remedies from time to time. At least, the average person would have thought it was strange. Onyx didn't know any different until she started going to school and realized that her friends' moms didn't give them such concoctions. They got cough syrup and decongestants. Onyx only went to the doctor a few times during her childhood, when she caught something particularly nasty, like strep. But that only happened when Onyx snuck candy when she went to her friends' houses. She learned early on to stop eating refined sugars if she didn't want to get sick. Onyx stepped out of her car as her mom pulled up beside her. Even though she lived down the street in an apartment complex with Sully, she would always consider this little cottage home. She'd spent a lot of happy years with her mom there, even though they'd had to deal with the heartbreak of her father abandoning them. It had been a place of healing for them, their own little nest of safety. Your herbs are coming along nicely this year, Onyx commented. Her mom took her herb garden very seriously. I've already harvested and dried a bunch of them. Every year, her mom ordered seeds online of her favorite herbs. Most of the ones she used couldn't be found in the stores around Maple Creek. In the backyard, her mom had a greenhouse full of vegetables and a summer garden she planted outdoors. When you were a vegetarian and ate organic, it made sense to grow most of what you ate yourself. Onyx pushed open the front door and smiled. Crystals blinked at her in the sunlight that poured through the front window. Her mom had them everywhere. She had geodes of amethysts displayed on the hearth next to the jade statuettes. It always felt like she was stepping into a cave of wonders when she walked through that front door. Her mom loved things that glittered. Onyx had gotten it from her. Her own love of sparkly things had driven her to open a wedding dress shop. She'd been the girliest girl imaginable when she was growing up. She always pretended to be a bride with her friends when they played together. She'd grab a blanket off her bed and wrap it around herself like it was a sequined dress with an impossibly long train. The fancier the dress, the better. One time, her mom's friend got a divorce and gave her the old wedding dress she didn't want around anymore. Onyx wore that dress until it was practically in rags. She was sad she hadn't had her own wedding yet, but she was determined to heal. She didn't want to get married to a jerk who would end up leaving her broken and alone, like what had happened to her mom. Her mom bustled past her to the kitchen. Onyx followed at her heels. Her mom pulled out the Brussels sprouts. Want me to chop those for you? Onyx offered. Sure. Her mom put a pot on the stove with some olive oil. She tossed the quinoa in and began toasting it. The rich aroma filled the air in the little house. Are you angry with Taylor because he took my spot at the fall festival? Of course I am. I thought that might be what's going on with you. He shouldn't have taken it from you like that. He didn't actually know he was taking anything from me. You didn't say anything to him? No. I figured it was my own fault that I'd forgotten my wallet in the car. You should have asked him to keep your place in line for you. Either way, he should have known better than to take the last spot. I don't think he knew it was the last spot. But he still took it. That's how the universe works sometimes. There must be a bigger reason for why that happened. You're saying he didn't do anything wrong? Not a thing. Then that means I've been mad at him for no good reason. Her mom stirred the quinoa silently for a moment. Onyx brought the chopped Brussels sprouts over to the skillet sitting on the burner. She poured a drop of oil in the pan and turned on the heat. It just really stinks that you weren't able to get a spot in the fall festival. I was pretty disappointed about it, but I know it's my own fault for forgetting my wallet. Maybe there's a way you could convince him to let you have his spot. An idea struck Onyx like lightning. Why hadn't she thought of this before? Maybe if she agreed to be his fake girlfriend, she could convince Taylor to let her mom have his booth in the fall festival. He would get to win the bet, and her mom would get her spot in the festival like she wanted.
Chapter 5. Taylor tied on his favorite red apron that said Grill Master across it. He put some chicken on the heated grill, humming happily to himself. He had a carton of potato salad that he'd picked up at the grocery store. It was going to go perfectly with his dinner. He brushed barbecue sauce on the chicken and went back into the kitchen to drop off the dish he'd had the chicken on. The doorbell rang, and he went to see who was there. Onyx Sharp stood on the doorstep, looking gorgeous in a flowy ivory shirt and dark skinny jeans. He could barely take his eyes off her. "Hey, Onyx, what can I help you with?"
Do you have a minute to talk?
Sure. I'm grilling out back, but you're welcome to join me. Have you eaten dinner yet? If not, I can throw a couple more pieces of chicken on for you.
I've already eaten.
She followed him into the house. He led her to the back patio, and they crossed the threshold to the backyard. She settled in on one of the Adirondack chairs on his back patio, near the spot where his grill sizzled with meat.
I've been thinking about your suggestion that we fake date.
Oh, yeah? Taylor flipped over a piece of chicken with a pair of long metal tongs.
I'll do it under one condition.
He looked over at her, scrutinizing her. What's that? He couldn't help but feel a bit defensive. She'd already rejected him multiple times. What was she planning to say now? And would it be worth whatever price she was asking?
You have to give your booth at the fall festival to my mom.
He blinked at her, stunned. That was the last thing he thought she'd ask. It seemed so random. How do you even know I have a booth at the fall festival?
My mom was in line in front of you when you were signing up. She forgot her wallet in the car and had to go back for it. When she came back, you were leaving the building. No one else was in line. She went up to the counter to pay for her booth, but she was informed that you'd just taken the last booth. She's had her crystal shop in that fall festival for years, and it always brings in new customers for her.
First of all, that was months ago. Second, I didn't know about any of that. I was just in line. I don't even remember her being there. My mind was on a patient I'd done a difficult surgery on.
I was concerned about her recovery.
Onyx crossed her arms.
Well, either way, you took the last spot.
And you want me to give up my spot to her?
Yes.
And you'll pretend to be my girlfriend if I do.
You got the gist of it?
Taylor considered this for a moment. He didn't really care about his booth at the fall festival that much. It was out of his comfort zone anyway to have to sit there and talk to a bunch of strangers about his practice. He wasn't good at that kind of stuff. Okay, you have a deal.
She can pay the fee for the table. She was planning to pay it anyway.
Taylor nodded and rotated a piece of chicken. Out of the corner of his eye, he caught Onyx wrinkling her nose. You don't like chicken?
I'm vegan.
Oh, I guess if I'm going to be your boyfriend, I should know that.
Pretend boyfriend, Onyx said.
Yes, It's just pretend.
I know I said I'd do it under one condition, but actually I lied,
Onyx said. How's that? Taylor raised an eyebrow at her.
I have other conditions too.
Like what?
This has to stay pretend. I'm not in this for anything real. You're not allowed to have feelings for me.
That won't be a problem. He glanced in her direction. Was it him, or did she seem offended by his response?
Also, you can only kiss me if other people are around. No sneaking kisses in private.
You mean you don't want to practice to make sure we're ready for our performance? Because I'm not doing anything after dinner. Onyx's cheeks turned bright red.
I think we've already had our practice session.
Did she want to kiss him again as much as he wanted to kiss her? That kiss had been one of the best kisses of his life. He'd never experienced sparks like that before. What's our story?
What do you mean?
He rotated another piece of chicken. You know, when people ask us how we got together. We should have that story arranged now so we know what to tell them. That way we're on the same page.
We'll tell them that we kissed at the party. Then I decided that I wanted you to kiss me again, and the rest is history.
If only it had happened like that. But Taylor was too awkward to get a girl like Onyx for real. Do you think that will be enough detail to persuade them it's true?
I'll just snuggle up to you, and that will convince them.
Taylor liked the sound of that. He could get used to this pretend romance thing if it meant he got to snuggle up to someone as pretty as Onyx.
When do we start this fake romance? Onyx asked.
Right away.
Are we allowed to tell anyone that it's fake?
Nope. With the way gossip is in this town, it would get around pretty fast that we were fake dating, Taylor said.
Onyx nodded and laughed. You're probably right about that. Mrs. Wheaton would have a heyday with this information.
No kidding.
When's our big debut as a couple going to be?
We can go to Dixie's Tavern tonight if you want.
Let's do it.
Let me get this chicken cooked and eaten, and then we'll go. Sound good?
Sure thing.
He finished grilling the chicken and then sat down with a plate of meat and potato salad. I feel bad eating in front of you. Are you sure you don't want any? There's potato salad, too.
I'm really not hungry. I don't eat potato salad anyway.
Okay, then. He picked up a piece of chicken and bit into it. I couldn't imagine giving this up. He glanced over at Onyx to gauge her reaction to him eating meat. She kept her expression neutral. It bugged him that he couldn't tell what she was thinking. Are you okay with me eating this in front of you? I mean, it doesn't offend you or anything, does it?
No, it doesn't offend me. I just prefer to not put it into my body.
Well, that much was good. At least she wasn't shooting him dirty looks for eating an innocent animal.
I'm pretty used to people eating meat in front of me.
I would imagine that's pretty unavoidable.
Yeah, people love their barbecues here in Maple Creek.
He polished off his food and then wiped his mouth. Ready to go to Dixie's?
Yep.
Awesome. He stood up and carried his plate into the house. Onyx followed him. This girl really didn't have much in common with him. Why had he chosen her out of all the girls around? There was the fact that she was the maid of honor and he was the best man in Layla and Will's wedding. But this seemed to be more than that. Maybe it was because there was something about her that drew him in. There was an honesty, an innocence about her that appealed to him. It wasn't obvious to see at first, but the longer he'd spent time with her over the past few years at parties and nights hanging out with friends at Dixie's Tavern, the more he'd begun to see that sweet, innocent side of her. She was spunky and quirky. That might be why she didn't seem to mind the fact that he could be awkward at times. He put his plate in the sink and then turned to Onyx. Want me to drive?
Sure. I parked on the street, so you should be able to get out.
Great. The garage is this way. He put a hand on the small of her back and led her through the kitchen to where the garage door stood. She felt good beneath his hand. Her waist was tiny and fragile, and instinctively he wanted to protect her. He opened the garage door, revealing where his top-of-the-line Jeep sat. He let go of her back and led her to the passenger side of the car, opening the door for her.
Thank you,
she said as she climbed in. He closed her door and got behind the wheel. He pushed on the button to open the garage door on the little remote he had clipped to his visor. He backed out of the garage.
"You know, you didn't have to open my door for me,"
Onyx said.
"This isn't a real date."
Was he being awkward again? His cheeks flushed. He wasn't sure what to say.
"Sorry about that."
Apologizing made him sound more awkward. He really wasn't good at this. Here he was, thinking that she wouldn't mind his awkwardness, but he'd only made a fool of himself. Maybe she minded after all.
"I mean,"
Onyx started.
"I guess I meant to say thank you. It was nice of you to get my door."
"Wait a second," he said, backing out of his driveway. "Are you actually being nice to me? What did I do to deserve that?"
"I may have been a bit too harsh on you to begin with,"
Onyx admitted. "You mean the death glares you've been sending me?
"You noticed that?"
Onyx sounded a bit sheepish. "Yeah, I noticed. I couldn't figure out what I'd ever done to make you so mad."
"I didn't realize I was being obvious."
"I can tell when someone hates me."
"I don't hate you."
Taylor glanced over at her. "Oh, really? You sure could have fooled me."
"I was upset that you stole my mom's spot in the fall festival."
"That was why?" Taylor couldn't believe it. "I didn't even know I was stealing anything."
"Yeah, I know that now. I thought you were some jerk before. You have to understand, I'm fiercely protective of my mom. She's been through a lot."
"What happened to your dad? Is he still in the picture?"
"Nope."
Onyx sounded bitter. He hoped he hadn't hit on a sore subject. There he went, saying the wrong thing again.
"I'm sorry.
That must be hard for you."
"It's not that hard now. My mom and I figured out how to survive without him, and the child support he never paid."
"I really admire that. I have no idea what it must have been like for you."
Chapter 6. What about your parents? Onyx asked. Are they still together?
Yep. They've been married for almost 35 years.
They really didn't have anything in common. How could he ever understand what she'd been through? Not that it mattered. This was all fake anyway. She had to remember that. It wasn't a date. They were putting on a show. Taylor pulled into the parking lot of Dixie's Tavern.
"You sit there,"
he said.
"I'm getting your door this time."
That made sense. They were officially starting their act since they were in public. It wouldn't do for anyone to see him neglecting to get her door. He opened her door, and she stepped out. "Thank you." He took her hand and threaded his fingers through hers. His hand was warm and felt strong. He looked good in the green t-shirt he had on. She could see the outline of a muscled body beneath the thin cotton of his shirt. She had the sudden urge to run her hand across his muscled chest, to see if it felt as rock hard as it looked. She shook her head to clear her mind. It wouldn't do to have thoughts like that. Not when nothing could come out of their pretend relationship. It needed to stay pretend. Her heart couldn't get involved this time. Not like when she'd first started with Wyatt. She tended to fall in love too easily. It was why she couldn't allow anything real to develop between her and Taylor. She'd been to his house a few times for parties, and she'd seen him at Dixie's Tavern often. But that didn't mean she knew him well enough to gauge whether he was a good guy or not. And let's face it, she wasn't the best judge of character. Her time with Wyatt was evidence enough of that. They stepped into the crowded room where a country song blared. The bar was packed with people ordering drinks. She allowed Taylor to lead them toward the pool tables, where a few of his buddies were playing a game. Dylan looked over at them, and his gaze landed on their entwined fingers. His eyes grew, and he nudged Noah and whispered something to him. "I think we've been spotted," Onyx said to Taylor, leaning close to him. She didn't really have a choice. If she wanted to talk to Taylor, She had to lean close, since the music was so loud near the bar.
That's the idea, right?
Taylor said into her ear, his breath tickling the small hairs on her neck. A shiver ran down her spine. Would she really be able to keep up this ruse with the way Taylor affected her? She and Taylor arrived at the pool table, and Dylan approached them.
What's all this?
Dylan asked, pointing to their hands. We're dating now, Onyx told him.
No kiddin'.
Dylan looked between them, with an arched brow like he suspected something was up. Maybe she would have to be a bit more convincing around Dylan. She took Taylor's arm and wrapped it around her waist. She snuggled against his muscled torso. Wow, he felt good. Every cell in her body came alive when she was this close to him. And he smelled amazing. It wasn't even a strong cologne smell or anything. It was a light soap smell mixed with Taylor's natural scent. She felt very drawn to it. It wouldn't be that hard to act like she was into him. It would be up to her to convince Dylan that she was dating Taylor. He would be less likely to believe his buddy since they made that bet.
So, is this new?
Dylan asked. Onyx smiled at him and then turned up to Taylor, allowing a softness to enter her eyes when she looked at him. She remembered well enough what it was like to look at Wyatt like that. It wasn't that hard to duplicate with Taylor. He just asked me to be his girlfriend tonight. We thought we'd go out to celebrate at Dixie's.
That's right,
Taylor said.
I can't believe how lucky I am to have a girl like Onyx.
His words warmed her chest. Did he really think he would be lucky to have her? She couldn't answer that question, because most likely he was only putting on a show. She couldn't let herself lose sight of that. This was nothing but a big, silly game. As real as it may feel, Taylor was only acting. Sully showed up with Aubrey Wheaton in tow. Onyx! Sully looked at Onyx snuggled into Taylor, and her jaw dropped. What's going on? Are you two together? Aubrey asked. We are now, Onyx said. How did this happen? Sully asked. Onyx knew her roommate would be the hardest to convince, but it was vital to ensure that Sully believed their ruse, because she spent so much time with Aubrey, whose mom was the biggest gossip in town. Sully wasn't exactly the best at keeping secrets either. Not that she didn't mean well. She got excited, and sensitive information tended to slip out at the wrong times around the wrong people. It happened today. Is this because of that little talk we had? Onyx knew exactly which talk she'd had with Sully, but she didn't want Taylor to know about it.
What does she mean?
He asked Onyx, confusion crossing his features. Before Onyx could answer, Sully piped up. I told her to go for you. It looks like she listened. Onyx felt the tips of her ears turning red. How embarrassing.
Oh, she did she?
Taylor held very still where their torsos connected. She could imagine the wheels spinning in his head as he tried to figure out what she said about him when he wasn't there. She told me she didn't want to be with you because she hates doctors, but I told her she was being ridiculous, Sully said. Well, looks like she came to her senses, Aubrey said. You know the Whitmore house is available for weddings, but you'll have to book your spot soon because they fill up fast. We're dating, Aubrey, not engaged, Onyx said. I know, Aubrey said in her usual bubbly voice. I thought I'd put it out there. Wouldn't want you to miss out. How about we see how this goes for a while first, Onyx said. Fair enough. I just get excited when I see new couples together. I want everyone to find their happily ever after. Onyx had mixed feelings about what Aubrey was saying. While she was a hopeless romantic at heart, She couldn't be excited about this moment in her life because she hadn't found anything. Her relationship with Taylor was nothing but a big fat lie. Thinking about it made her inside squirm uncomfortably, but she couldn't put her finger on why. She knew she wasn't ready for a real relationship anyway. She still had a lot of healing to do from her messy past. She wasn't in the right place energetically to be looking around for love. She wasn't sure she ever would be again. Wyatt had really done a number on her. "You still haven't told us how you guys got together," Sully pointed out. Onyx had hoped she'd dodged that question, but that didn't seem to be the case. "Well?" She snuggled into Taylor and looked up at him with what she hoped looked like love in her eyes. "When Taylor surprised me with that kiss at his house a few weeks ago, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Finally, I went to his house today. We discovered that the feeling was mutual, and we decided to do something about it." It was a believable story. Onyx almost bought it herself, probably because it was partially true. She really hadn't been able to stop thinking about that kiss. She really wanted him to kiss her again, to be honest. Sully squealed. "That's so romantic. I'm glad you found someone." "Me too," Onyx said, smiling up at Taylor. His smile seemed a little stiff, and she worried that her friends might notice that something was off with him and pick up on the fact that they were pretending. She didn't want her friends to find out and feel upset with her for being dishonest with them. A slow dance song started, and Taylor bent down to Onyx.
"Would you like to go dance?"
"Sure, let's go."
"We'll see you guys in a bit. We're gonna go dance,"
Taylor told them. He led her onto the dance floor, and she felt at home in his arms. It wasn't supposed to feel this natural. "How do you think we're doing?" Onyx asked him.
"I think they're buying it."
Probably because being with Taylor felt so real, and she hardly had to act. "I kind of feel bad for lying to my friends. What are we going to say to them after the wedding?"
"We won't have to say anything to them. After a few weeks, we can stage a breakup, and they won't have to ever know it was fake."
"I guess that could work."
"You don't have anything to worry about. After we stage the breakup, I'll transfer the Fall Festival booth to your mom's name, and we can put this entire thing behind us."
"Aren't your friends going to bug you about being single again?"
"Nah. I'm sure they'll have moved on to some other sucker to tease."
Chapter 7. Taylor woke up several mornings later to a chime from his cell phone on his bedside table. Taylor picked up his phone and rubbed sleep from his eyes. "Onyx, do you want to go get coffee this morning at Josie's coffee shop?" This fake relationship was going better than he'd expected. So far, all their friends had completely bought that they were an item now. Even Dylan seemed to have more respect for him, and he'd almost stopped teasing him altogether. "Taylor, coffee sounds great. I need something to help me wake up this morning." Onyx, "Perfect. How does 8 o'clock sound?" Taylor, "Works for me." Onyx, "See you then." He rolled out of bed and stumbled into the master bathroom. He turned on his shower and let it run until steam filled his bathroom. He didn't want to smell bad if he was going to be around Onyx this morning. After showering and getting dressed, he left the house and drove over to Josie's coffee shop. It was the best place in town for coffee and was usually crowded in the mornings. This morning was no different. He was lucky to find one last spot for his Jeep in the back parking lot. He went inside through the back door and joined the long line at the counter. Josie had her red hair pulled up into a ponytail, and she was bustling around, filling orders alongside her employees. The front door opened, and Onyx joined the crowd. He waved her over. "Come join me in line. I saved you a spot." "Oh, thanks," she said brightly. She sure was cheerful for it being so early in the morning. "Are you a morning person or something?" he asked her. She laughed. "Am I that obvious? I don't know how you can have so much energy before you get your coffee."
I already did yoga and went running this morning.
I had to sleep in. I was exhausted after performing a long surgery yesterday.
Oh, wow. How did that go?
It went well. The patient has a long recovery, though. The door jangled, and Will and Layla stepped inside. What's our maid of honor and best man doing here together? Will asked when he saw them. Onyx looped her arm around Taylor's.
We're together now, she told them.
What?
Layla gasped. How did I not know this? I feel like the worst friend ever.
It's okay, Taylor said. It's still pretty new.
We should all go on a double date, Layla said. Wouldn't that be so fun? That does sound fun, Onyx said. You guys are going to be so adorable together at the wedding,
Layla cooed. Mrs. Wheaton, the notorious town gossip, approached them.
I couldn't help but overhear that Taylor and Onyx are in a relationship now. Is that true?
Yes, ma'am, Taylor said. I'm one lucky guy, aren't I?
I would say so,
Mrs. Wheaton said, clapping her hands together, causing the loose skin beneath her arms to swing wildly.
And are you expecting your own set of wedding bells soon?
Onyx's cheeks turned pink.
We're not quite to that point in our relationship.
Your daughter Aubrey asked us the same thing, Taylor said.
You mean to say my Aubrey knew you two were dating and she didn't tell me? I can't believe it.
Taylor chuckled. How could she?
Well, if anything develops further in this relationship, you'll have to keep me informed,
Mrs. Wheaton said. I'm sure there's no way we could keep you from finding out, Taylor said. Mrs. Wheaton said goodbye and left the coffee shop. That was exciting, Taylor said.
I'll say,
Onyx agreed. You guys want to sit together after we order our coffee? Will asked.
Sure,
Onyx said. They stepped up to the counter, and Josie took their order.
I'll have an almond milk latte,
Onyx said. You don't want a muffin or anything? Taylor asked. I'm buying.
Nope, they aren't vegan. Muffins have eggs.
I'll have a regular latte and a blueberry muffin, Taylor said. Josie gave him the total and he paid her. They stepped aside to allow Layla and Will to give Josie their order.
Thanks for buying me coffee,
Onyx said. No problem, Taylor said. I'm still reeling from the fact that you can't eat muffins. Taylor couldn't believe it. How do you live like that?
It's tricky eating out, but I've found things I can eat at various restaurants. I make a lot of stuff myself.
You'll have to let me try some of your vegan recipes, Taylor said. Onyx blinked in surprise.
You would want that?
Sure.
I'll warn you, most people think my food is disgusting.
His face blanched like he regretted offering to try her food.
You don't have to eat it if you don't want to.
Oh, good. I didn't want to say anything to offend you, but I've been told that I'm a picky eater. I do like to try new things from time to time, not that I would suddenly become a health nut. I like cookies and ice cream too much for that.
You sound like Sully.
Their order was ready, and they took the drinks and Taylor's muffin from Josie.
Should we go find a table?
Onyx asked. Sure. Taylor led the way to an empty table in the corner of the room. Taylor slid into the booth, and Onyx scooted into the space beside him. Taylor could get used to this snuggling up in the booth thing. Will and Layla were quick to join them.
Let's hear the story of how you two lovebirds got together,
Layla said, settling into the booth next to Will.
I want all the juicy details.
Onyx repeated their carefully rehearsed story.
That's adorable,
Layla said when she'd finished.
I knew something big was starting between you two when I saw you kissing at Taylor's party. You guys have some mad chemistry.
Taylor felt Onyx stiffen beside him. Did it bother her that Layla had noticed the chemistry that had been so obvious when they'd kissed? He'd been overwhelmed by it, but it was something else entirely if Layla had noticed it from across the room. That meant he hadn't imagined it. And it wasn't only on his end. At least, it didn't look that way to Layla. Onyx had even admitted to liking the kiss, but that didn't change the fact that she didn't want to be with him. He didn't have the ability to sweep her off her feet he was pretending to have to all his friends. He was still awkward Taylor, who only got Onyx to agree to fake date him. And that was because he had the table her mom wanted so she could get her crystal shop in the fall festival. He'd let himself get way too caught up in the fun of pretending to date. For a minute there, he'd almost forgotten that this was fake. That was a terrible mistake he didn't want to make again. He was beginning to see a path that his heart might want to take toward Onyx, and that would only end badly. If he wanted to come out of this fake relationship unscathed, he would really have to watch himself. He couldn't allow his emotions to take control like he'd been seeing the beginnings of.
You know, Onyx,
Layla reached across the table and took her hand.
I'm really proud of you for being brave enough to try a relationship again after what happened with Wyatt. I know that whole situation was really hard on you.
Taylor looked over at Onyx to see what her reaction to this comment would be. She looked down at her cup and didn't say anything. Taylor looked back to Layla. We haven't really talked about Wyatt yet. Well, not much anyway. I think we may have briefly talked about him. Layla's eyes widened.
Oh, I'm so sorry I brought that up. I assumed the two of you had already gone there. I know the aftermath of that relationship was a big reason why Onyx has stayed single for the past couple of years.
Taylor hoped that Layla would stop talking about Wyatt. He didn't want to make Onyx any more uncomfortable than she already was. He was afraid she might bolt from the coffee shop. He hoped that with time she'd be willing to open up to him about what had happened with Wyatt. He wanted to know how a relationship could scar someone so deeply that they would want to stay alone for years. Especially someone warm and bubbly like Onyx. People naturally gravitated toward her, and she was so gorgeous that she could get any guy she wanted. She was the real deal. It seemed strange that she was single to begin with.
Taylor, why have you been single all these years? Layla said. I know I'm being nosy. You can tell me to leave you alone at any time.
No, it's okay. I don't mind talking about it. I've spent a lot of years in school, and I wouldn't have had the time to devote to a relationship. I opted to stay single until I had more time to give to my potential significant other.
That makes sense, Layla said. Has it been hard adjusting to a life with another person to think about after being single for so many years?
Taylor wasn't sure how to answer her question since he wasn't in a real relationship. He answered the best he could. It hasn't been too bad. We recently started dating, so I have a feeling all the adjustments are probably something we'll have to face down the road a bit. Believe me, Will said. You will. Being in a committed relationship is wonderful, but it can be a lot of work. I love Layla with all my heart, but I still have to realize that there's this other person I need to make accommodations for. I can't just run off and make plans without talking to her first. Taylor hadn't thought about that being an issue. He'd been a bachelor for so many years, he'd grown accustomed to having the freedom and independence to whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. But if he could be with someone as amazing as Onyx, it would be worth the sacrifice. With a start, he realized he really was ready to settle down. At least, he wanted to start thinking about it.
Chapter 8. The following Friday night, they had plans to meet Layla and Will at the China House, the town's sit-down Chinese restaurant. Taylor stopped by Onyx's apartment and picked her up. She climbed into his Jeep. She'd worn an earthy bohemian-style maxi dress and let her hair hang in loose waves.
You look beautiful,
Taylor said as she buckled up. Thanks. She felt the blush hit her cheeks. Why did she have to care that Taylor was attracted to her? It wasn't like she had plans to do anything about it. After the wedding, they were staging a breakup, and she probably wouldn't spend any time with Taylor again after that.
I'm sorry if Layla made you uncomfortable talking about Wyatt,
Taylor said.
I want you to know you're welcome to talk to me about what happened anytime.
I don't think it's appropriate to talk about my ex while on a date, Onyx said.
Lucky for you, this isn't a real date. We're just pretending, remember?
Taylor said. I suppose you have a point there.
I'm safe to be the neutral guy friend here, and I happen to be a good listener.
Onyx wasn't sure how she felt about him declaring that he was just her friend. That shouldn't bother her. She was the one who said she didn't want a relationship with him. That's sweet of you, Taylor. I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to hear about it.
I do. I've never been in a bad relationship before, so I can't say I know how it feels. But I understand how life can be hard.
That's true. We all have our trials we're dealing with.
You don't have to tell me, but if you ever feel like you want to talk about it, I'm willing to listen.
Onyx eyed him. Why am I getting the impression that you really want me to talk about what happened with Wyatt?
Okay, maybe I'm feeling a little bit nosy. I can't help it.
Onyx laughed, the tension leaving her body. I can talk about Wyatt if that's what you want.
I mean, you don't have to.
Be quiet and listen.
Okay, I'm shutting up.
Wyatt was a smooth talker. He made everything seem flawless in the beginning. All daisies and sunshine.
What happened then?
Slowly, as he built trust with me, he started turning the tables. He wanted to be in control of everything I did. He started pressuring me to eat meat and the foods he liked. He smothered me with all these gifts and insisted that I display them in my house when they didn't match my decor. When I didn't want to do what he said, he acted like a victim, like I was the one who was causing all the problems in the relationship.
Isn't that called gaslighting?
Yeah. He turned reality into his version of the truth. After a while, I got so confused I started questioning my own sanity.
That sounds awful.
It was like living in my own personal worst nightmare.
I can see why you don't like talking about it.
Actually, it helps a lot to talk about it, as painful as it is.
I feel like I don't have the right words to make it better.
It's not your job to make it better. I'm responsible for my own healing.
It sounds like you've been working hard to move on from that nut job.
You can say that again.
Good for you, for recognizing that you were in a toxic relationship. How long were you dating before you figured it out?
We were only together for a couple of months. Wyatt started pressuring me to marry him. That was one of my first red flags. I considered it for a while, and we went back and forth with him trying to persuade me. When I finally got firm with him and told him I wasn't ready for marriage, he went ballistic. It was really scary. You don't want to see this guy in a rage.
He sounds like a real piece of work. Hearing about this makes me want to punch him into next week.
As satisfying as that is to think about, it wouldn't solve anything. Taylor pulled into the parking lot of the restaurant, and he swept around to Onyx's side of the door and let her out. They walked into the building together. The foyer of the restaurant was covered in oriental rugs and statues and tapestries from all over Asia. This place was way too romantic for a couple only pretending to date. Onyx's phone buzzed, and she checked her messages. Layla. We are on our way. We'll be there in about 5 minutes. Can you grab a table for us? Onyx. Sure. That was Layla. They're about 5 minutes out. She wants us to get them a table. They approached the hostess stand and asked for a table for 4.
You eat here often?
Taylor asked. I do. Layla and I love this place.
How does that fit with your vegan diet?
They have vegan stuff here. It's pretty good.
Ah, so Layla knew to pick a restaurant that had food she knew you'd like.
Basically.
She sounds like a good friend.
She's the best. We've been friends for a long time. I can't believe she's about to get married.
I know. I feel the same way about Will. We've been bachelors together for so long. It's weird to think he's going to be an old married man soon.
The wedding is in less than a month. Pretty soon we'll be busy with the festivities.
It's hard to believe. Time has really flown by.
We'll be having our 1-month anniversary here before you know it.
Huh. Our fake 1-month anniversary.
Don't say that too loud, Onyx warned. You never know what busybody could be listening to our conversation.
Good point. Nowhere is safe in this town. At least not if you have a secret.
Or if you value your privacy, Onyx added.
Taylor laughed. I think half the little old ladies who come to see me at my medical practice are determined to marry me off.
It's like they think it's a sin to be single in this town. Onyx felt a twinge of pain in her stomach. She probably shouldn't have eaten those vegan pot stickers she'd had sitting in the fridge for over a week, but she'd come home from work and felt ravenous. They were so good when she'd had them last week, but they tasted a little funny when she'd eaten them earlier. She hadn't wanted to be hangry on her night out with friends. She called it a night out with friends to herself, because it wasn't really a double date if she wasn't really dating Taylor. She'd eaten those gross pot stickers. It wasn't the best decision she'd ever made. She just hoped it didn't haunt her for the rest of the night. The hostess led them to a booth in the middle of the restaurant. Onyx chose to sit on the outside so she could make a speedy exit to the bathroom if it came to that. A wave of pain hit her belly. She winced, and Taylor seemed to notice.
Are you okay?
I'm fine. Why do you ask?
You looked like you were in pain.
Nope, there's nothing wrong with me. She didn't want to tell him she had most likely given herself food poisoning. She would just try to pretend she wasn't in excruciating pain, and she would discreetly slip away to the bathroom when the time came. The server came and took their drink orders. Onyx ordered some sparkling water and a cup of chamomile tea, hoping that would calm her stomach. After the server left, another wave of pain hit her, and she gripped the table to help her get through it. She didn't dare move, because something deadly might slip out. She needed to go to the bathroom, but was too afraid to move. Was this what it felt like to be in labor? She'd never had the pleasure herself, so she couldn't be sure. But this was what she imagined it felt like. Her stomach rumbled loudly, and some of the pressure lifted.
Did you hear that? Taylor asked.
Hear what? Maybe if she played dumb, he would think he was imagining things. It's a little noisy in here, so I have no idea what you're referring to. He shook his head like he was imagining things.
Never mind.
Will and Layla showed up. Hey, you two lovebirds, Layla greeted them. I hope you guys are hungry because this place is fantastic, and they give you a ton of food. Onyx would have been hungry if it weren't for the fact that she'd eaten rotten pot stickers right before coming. Will and Taylor got into a deep conversation about Will's adventures as the police chief. I'm going to head to the bathroom, Layla said. Order me a lemon water. Onyx watched her retreating form as another wave of pain hit her, this one the most debilitating of all. And now, she couldn't even run off to the bathroom to relieve herself, because Layla was in there and would hear and smell everything. Just then, a gigantic wave of gas hit her, and a burning hot plume of toxicity escaped. She couldn't hold it back. She knew it was going to stink, but it was too late to do anything to prevent that. Maybe the two guys would just blame it on each other. The pungent smell was a mixture of rotten eggs and old dirty gym socks that hadn't been changed in a week straight. She knew both guys would smell it. How could they miss something that powerful? It was like a mushroom cloud that kept billowing over their table. A nuclear bomb. The guys looked at each other, and she imagined that they were secretly blaming it on each other because of the looks they were giving each other. Taylor was experiencing the brunt of the attack since he was sitting beside her. He held his napkin over his nose and mouth like a mask, and he acted like he was wiping his mouth, but she knew better. The server showed up with her sparkling water and her tea, and she gulped down the fizzy liquid, hoping it would soothe her stomach before another atomic fart escaped. If she went to the bathroom now, they would both know it was her. The server looked like he wanted to gag, and turned away before even asking them if there was anything else he could get them. She felt another one coming, and this time, before it escaped, she decided she'd better go to the bathroom before more than just gas released. She wasn't in the mood to play peek-a-poop at the table tonight. She excused herself without explanation and stood up from the table. Cheeks clenched, she walked as gracefully as she could to the bathroom. At this point, it didn't matter if Layla would witness her explosion. She was desperate.
Chapter 9. Taylor watched Onyx's retreating form. He could tell something was wrong by the way she was walking. She had her pelvis angled forward and her hips swaying, but oddly enough, she looked like a dog with his tail between his legs. "Do you think that awful smell was her?" Will asked. "Well, it sure wasn't me," Taylor said. "It wasn't me either. Maybe it was the server." Will nodded at that. "That's gotta be it. I can't imagine a smell like that coming from someone as dainty as Onyx. My nose hairs are still burning from that smell." A few minutes later, Layla returned from the bathroom with a grossed-out look on her face. "Is everything okay?" Will asked her.
"Yep, everything's fine. Why do you ask?"
"You had a weird look on your face."
"I'm not the one you should be worried about,"
Layla said. "What do you mean by that?" Taylor asked.
"Let's just say there were some explosions in the bathroom. I think Onyx is sick. She may be in there for a while, but don't tell her I said anything. She wouldn't want you to know. Onyx gets private about stuff like that."
"You missed it," Will said. "She let a ripe one rip while you were in the bathroom."
"Believe me, I got the full show. She almost blew the door off the stalls. I'm pretty sure she levitated."
The server returned and took their order.
"There's still another person who needs to order," Layla said. "She just ran to the restroom. She may be a while."
The server nodded and then took the orders of the 3 remaining at the table. By the time he finished, Onyx returned from the bathroom. Her face was flushed like she'd just been through a war zone. "Everything okay?" Taylor asked.
"It's fine."
She took a seat next to Taylor. She picked up her menu and looked around the table.
"You guys don't have menus. Did the server just come take our orders?"
"Yep, but we told him to come back to take yours."
"Okay, I already know what I want."
She closed the menu. The server passed their table, and Will waved him down. "Are you ready to order?" he asked Onyx.
"Yes, I'll have the vegetable red curry."
She handed her menu to the server. Taylor didn't think it sounded good. He really would miss the meat from his meal. He wasn't the biggest veggie person anyway. He tended to eat simple foods like burgers and fries. He'd ordered the sweet and sour chicken for himself that night.
"Sure thing. I'll add that to your order."
He disappeared back into the kitchen.
"How are the wedding plans going?" Onyx asked. "You know, I'm the maid of honor. I'm supposed to be helping you. Give me stuff to do." "I'm not sure there's a ton to do right now. My dress is already back from getting altered, but you already know that. I'm handling my own flowers out of my flower shop. Alexis is doing my cake, and Aubrey is handling the venue." "What about a bachelorette party?" Onyx asked. I haven't thought of that yet."
"Are you doing a bachelor party?" Taylor asked Will. "I was thinking about taking everyone down to the river to go fishing. Something low-key."
"That does sound like you," Taylor said. "Well, let's brainstorm some ideas for you," Onyx said to Layla. "Sure. You could go hiking," Onyx said. "I don't know. We could do something high adventure, like that ropes course they have near the Blue Ridge Parkway." "All those things seem like they would take too much energy. Maybe we should just do something boring, like have a spa night." "Well, it's your night. You get to do whatever you want. Maybe we could do those masks that come in a little package and you just lay this paper over your face. Those are pretty inexpensive. And we could have snacks and watch a chick flick," Layla said. "Popcorn? Yes. I wonder if my mom would be willing to let me have it at her house. She has more room than me. I'm sure she would. Your mom is ecstatic for you to get married. She sure bugged me enough until I finally got together with Will."
Onyx laughed.
"I remember that. At least my mom hasn't been pushing me too hard to find a guy. Have you told her you're dating Taylor yet?"
Onyx shook her head.
"Why not?"
Onyx paused like she didn't want the truth to come out, and she was trying to figure out what to say instead. Taylor wondered if she hadn't told her mom because she didn't want to lie to her and get her mom all excited about a guy who wasn't going to end up sticking around. Why even bring it up? That was why Taylor hadn't told his parents about Onyx. He was surprised with the gossip mill churning in Maple Creek that they hadn't already heard about it from someone else. He would probably have to tell them eventually.
"I just want to make sure I'm ready to let her know,"
Onyx said.
"It's kind of a big deal to tell your mom you're dating someone."
"That makes sense.
I'll tell her when it feels right."
Their server brought their food out. Taylor dug into his sweet and sour chicken. It wasn't the best thing he'd ever had, but he was hungry, and it was filling his belly. Taylor wondered how Onyx's mom would react if she knew that Onyx was fake dating him. Would she be able to see straight through their facade? The lady was a psychic after all. He wasn't sure he believed in psychics. He didn't know much about it. When he thought about them, he just pictured a fortune teller hovering over a crystal ball like he saw in the cartoons when he was a kid. But he knew it was important to Onyx, and he respected her, and wanted to understand more about her life and her family. "How's the vegetable curry?" he asked her.
"It's delicious."
"Is it pretty spicy?" he asked.
"It's not too bad. You want to try some?"
Taylor wasn't sure how he felt about the idea, but he didn't want to seem rude to Onyx either.
"Sure."
He speared something white and round. It was surprisingly crunchy, and he had no idea what it was. Then the fire hit. His eyes watered, and he started fanning his mouth. Onyx laughed.
"Too spicy for you?"
Taylor grabbed his water and chugged it, but it didn't seem to do much to relieve the burning in his mouth.
"You're better off eating some of your rice,"
Onyx said. He scooped a giant forkful of rice into his mouth. He swallowed it without hardly chewing, and it slid down his throat in too big of a lump. He grabbed his water and gulped some more, hoping to push the food farther down his esophagus.
"Are you okay?"
Onyx asked. He probably looked ridiculous. He coughed.
"I'm fine,"
he was able to make out.
"I take it you're not a spicy food kind of guy."
"Not usually." He drank some more water.
"That wasn't even their hottest dish. This one was considered medium."
He couldn't imagine how much worse the hottest items on the menu were.
"What was that strange, crunchy vegetable I ate?"
"That was a water chestnut. Haven't you had those before? It's pretty common to put them in Asian food."
"I don't usually eat vegetables."
"Like, at all?
Do fries count?"
"No," Layla said.
"Then I don't eat vegetables, unless you count the mushrooms on the Mushroom Swiss burger at Dixie's Tavern."
"Onyx, you're the most health-conscious person I know. How did you end up with a guy who's your polar opposite?"
Layla asked. That was just it. They weren't actually together.
"We don't have to be alike to make a relationship work,"
Onyx said.
"People do it all the time."
That wasn't what she told him the day he kissed her. She'd told him she couldn't be with him because they were too different. It was too bad she didn't believe what she was saying. He wouldn't mind trying to make a relationship with Onyx work.
Chapter 10. 2 weeks before the wedding, Onyx went off-roading with Taylor in his Jeep. Will and Layla came along too, and they got a campsite with the guys and girls sharing separate tents. They drove to the campground in separate vehicles and planned to meet up just in time to start dinner. Taylor told her he would prepare dinner and that he would surprise her with something vegan. She thought it was incredibly sweet of him to go through the effort of cooking something special for her. When she'd agreed to fake date Taylor, she hadn't realized she would end up spending so much time with him. She thought it would just be a few performances here and there. But since all her friends thought she was dating Taylor, she had to keep up the facade. If she'd realized that, she probably would have told him she wasn't willing to do it. But she knew she owed it to her mom to help her get her crystal shop in the fall festival. You know, she told him as they drove to the campground, you're not as bad as I thought you were going to be.
Gee, thanks,
he said glumly. That didn't really come out right. I mean, I like hanging out with you, but I wasn't expecting that.
You thought I'd be boring and stuffy?
No, I thought you'd be arrogant. This big know-it-all.
Because I'm a doctor.
Onyx felt dumb. Had she really stereotyped him like that? Just because some doctors got big heads from all the school they'd attended didn't mean Taylor was like that. He hadn't once acted arrogant or flaunted his schooling. If she'd just met him, she wouldn't even know he was a doctor, except for the fact that he mentioned it occasionally in passing. No, Taylor wasn't the bragging type. I guess I shouldn't have assumed you'd be like the stereotype I'd created in my head for doctors.
What do you see me as, then?
Taylor sounded bare when he said it, in a vulnerable kind of way. You sound like you care what I think.
I do care.
I guess that makes sense. You're basically forced to spend time with me until the wedding is over.
I don't mind it so much.
I don't mind it either. But to answer your question, how could she say what she felt without getting all mushy on him? I think you're easy to talk to. You're a good listener. A good kisser. But she wasn't going to say that part aloud. Although he did look very kissable in this moment. You're funny and easygoing.
Thank you.
And humble. I think that's the best part. You aren't an arrogant jerk. Shoot, she did end up getting all mushy on him after all. Her heart swelled within her chest as she focused on what a good guy Taylor really was.
That's really nice of you to say,
Taylor said.
To be honest, you're a lot nicer than I thought you would be. I could tell you didn't like me before. You were a bit scary at first.
I was scary? Onyx had never thought of herself like that before. She was usually the easygoing one that people flocked to.
You were terrifying.
Then why did you get the courage to walk up to me and kiss me like that?
That was a mental lapse.
Is that some sort of official medical terminology?
No, it's something I just made up.
Onyx laughed. What's a mental lapse?
It's where my brain just shorted out.
I can understand that. Her brain had done the same thing. When your brain shorts out, you just go into kissing mode? She teased.
It did when you were standing in front of me.
Onyx felt her cheeks tinge pink. Had he felt the same amount of chemistry toward her she'd felt toward him? Because it was off the charts. Just thinking about it made her want another kiss from him. She'd wondered why he hadn't chosen to perform for Layla and Will before. Maybe it was because he was afraid of what another kiss would do. As much as she longed to kiss him again, she was afraid to let her heart get involved. She wasn't ready for another relationship after what had happened with Wyatt.
You just got all quiet,
Taylor said.
Can you pull up your GPS on your phone and help me navigate to the campground?
What's the campground called?
Briar Creek Farms.
Is this place an actual farm?
Yep. They have beehives, a donkey named Hee Haw, and a cow named Moon Pie. You can buy the honey and get fresh baked sourdough bread.
Hee Haw? What kind of name is that? Onyx asked.
Haven't you seen the show?
There's a show?
I used to watch it with my grandpa when I was little.
Is that like Mr. Ed?
Oh, that's a great show too. We should watch them when we get to the campsite. I'll have to see if I can pull it up on my phone.
Deal. Onyx pulled out her phone and searched for Briar Creek Farms. It's 1 hour away, she said.
Good. I knew I was heading in the right direction, but I couldn't remember all the turns I'm supposed to take after we leave the interstate. No worries, I'm an excellent navigator. She could have let the GPS do all the work, but she wanted to feel helpful. For the next 30 minutes, she studied the map, scrolling in and out on the navigation app to notice other interesting things in the area. She told Taylor when a turn was coming up, and she squealed in delight as they crossed over a raging river with rapids that cut through tall mountains on either side. This drive is really gorgeous.
I love coming out here,
Taylor said. I haven't been out this way since I was a kid, Onyx said. We used to go camping as a family.
Was that when your dad was around?
Taylor asked. Yes. Those were some of the only times he was in a good mood. My dad loves camping. He's quite the outdoorsman. I love the outdoors, too.
What about your mom?
She loves nature, too. You should see her yard. She always has something edible growing in her yard year-round.
I planted some apple trees earlier this summer. That's about the only thing I can think of that I'd eat from the yard.
What about peaches?
I could do peaches. Any fruit, really. I'm just not into the vegetables.
Did your parents have a garden when you were growing up?
My dad did. He loves gardening. He always tried to convince me to eat the peas and green beans he grew there, but it never worked. For as long as I can remember, I've avoided eating vegetables.
Not even carrots?
Maybe if they were mixed in something like chicken noodle soup.
You really are picky.
My mom says I eat like a 5-year-old.
Onyx couldn't help but laugh. There are worse things than eating like a 5-year-old. Onyx turned her attention back to the phone and scrolled in to see what the name of the river they were driving next to was called. A wave of nausea hit her. She noticed that her head was hurting a bit when she'd first started messing around with the phone, but now it had gotten much worse. Do you mind if I roll down the window?
Go for it.
She pushed the button that lowered the window and gulped in the fresh air that blew onto her face. It helped a little, but it wasn't enough. Another wave of nausea rolled over her, and she said, I think I'm gonna need you to pull over.
What's wrong?
I'm carsick.
Uh-oh.
Taylor pulled onto the side of the road next to a bright green forest. Onyx stumbled from the Jeep just as she lost her lunch all over the ground. It splattered everywhere, and some of it got onto her hair and the side of the Jeep. She took some deep breaths. Taylor got out of the driver's side. Oh, no, Onyx exclaimed. Don't come over here! But he didn't listen to her. He rounded the front of the Jeep and saw her bent over with her hands on her upper thighs.
It's okay,
Taylor assured her, patting her back.
I'm a doctor. Do you think I'd be grossed out by a little bit of vomit? Believe me, I've seen much worse.
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. He opened the back door, and she hoped he didn't notice the puke that had landed there. He pulled out a package of wipes and a water bottle. He pulled a wipe out and handed it to her. She cleaned off her hands and her mouth. Then, when he looked away, she swiped at the side of the Jeep where her vomit had splattered. She folded up the wipe until the gross part was tucked safely inside. She hid it in the palm of her hand. She didn't want Taylor to see that part, doctor or not. She breathed in the fresh air the surrounding forest provided.
Here you go.
Taylor handed her the water bottle, and she cracked off the lid. The water refreshed her, and she felt better getting the icky taste out of her mouth. She thought it was bad when she farted in the restaurant. She had no idea what real humiliation was. This was much worse. And now she had to go back in the car with Taylor and face him for the rest of the trip. She couldn't let him know how embarrassed she felt.
Chapter 11. Taylor felt bad for Onyx when he'd had to pull over so she could throw up on the side of the road. He knew he would have felt horrified if something like that would have happened to him. She seemed to handle it well, though, and climbed into the car like nothing had happened. I think I should probably keep the GPS on my phone from now on so you don't feel carsick from staring at it for too long,
That's a good idea.
He put the GPS on his phone and clipped it to the phone stand attached to his dash.
Doesn't your Jeep have a GPS built into it?
Yeah, but I don't ever remember to use it.
My mom's new car has that, and it's pretty cool. She just pushes a button on her steering wheel and tells it where she wants to go.
Sounds fancy. They talked for the next hour, and before long they had pulled up to the campground. His Jeep tires crunched over the gravel road, and he pulled up to the little office to check in and get the campsite he'd made a reservation for.
I'll just chill out here,
she said. Okay. When he came back, he had an assigned campsite and a map of the campsite in his hand. He walked toward the Jeep, and through the windshield he could see that Onyx had on headphones and was doing a little dance to whatever she was listening to. He thought she looked adorable. He opened the door, and she yanked off the headphones like she'd just been caught doing something embarrassing. You don't have to stop dancing just because I'm here, he teased her.
Very funny. I hate dancing in front of other people.
You didn't seem to mind when we were dancing at Dixie's.
That was different. We were dancing together, and it's expected there. Everyone dances at Dixie's.
If you love to dance, then rock it out. It doesn't bother me any.
No way! That's totally embarrassing.
Onyx's cheeks turned pink. You're really cute when you're embarrassed.
No, I'm not. I'm awkward.
Taylor laughed at that. And here I was thinking I was the awkward one.
You're not awkward.
Taylor gave her a disbelieving look.
Okay, maybe you were a little awkward right before we started to fake date, but you're not awkward at all now.
You mean when I gave you that kiss?
Strangely enough, that wasn't the awkward part. It was when you were trying to talk to me, and you kept stumbling all over your words.
Now it was Taylor's turn to feel embarrassed. But you didn't think the kiss was awkward? Onyx grew still, her eyes serious when she looked up at him.
No, I didn't think the kiss was awkward.
The way she said it made him think she wanted him to kiss her again. And not because it was part of a ploy to get people to believe they were in love, or at least in like. No, he was pretty sure she wanted him to kiss her even when they were alone, and there was no one to perform for. Like right now. Onyx, he asked, his voice husky. He leaned toward her to gauge her reaction. Would she pull away from him? She didn't. Instead, she looked up at him and gave him those kiss-me eyes again. Do you want me to kiss you? She closed her eyes and leaned into him. A loud pounding sounded on the driver's side window behind Taylor, and his eyes flew open. Onyx startled and jumped away from him. Taylor looked over his shoulder to see Will standing outside his door. He rolled down the window. Will busted up, laughing. I saw you two getting a little too cozy in the Jeep, and I couldn't resist. But Will was assuming that they kissed all the time. He had no idea he'd just ruined a huge moment for his best friend. You really suck. You know that, right? Oh, come on. You can kiss her later. Let's get to our campsite. They told me inside that you'd already registered. All right. It's site number 37. I'll meet you over there. Will climbed into the old Bronco that he bought so he could go off-roading. He couldn't exactly take his police cruiser. Taylor drove to the campsite. It was right next to a pasture. A cow grazed off in the distance.
Do you think that's moon pie?
Onyx asked. It must be. Taylor turned off the engine. He stepped out of his Jeep and pushed a button on his door that opened the back hatch. He started unloading stuff onto the picnic table. Will and Layla pulled in beside them and started unloading Will's Bronco. Onyx and Layla grabbed their tent and began setting it up while he set up his tent with Will. Once they had their tents up and their sleeping bags rolled out with their pillows inside, Taylor started working on getting the fire built. He had their tinfoil dinners all prepared in the cooler. He'd made Onyx a version with sweet potatoes, corn, and black beans. He hoped she liked it. He was a little nervous about cooking for her since she seemed to be so particular about what she ate. But it was important to him she enjoyed his cooking. He pulled some wood and kindling out of his Jeep. He liked to carry it with him because he never knew what the campground would allow. He arranged the wood into a teepee and put the kindling inside. He lit the kindling and blew on it. He added some dry leaves and they caught fire. He tended the fire until he had a nice set of hot coals he could cook with. He tucked the wrapped foil dinners into the bottom and used a stick to cover them with coals. As he worked next to the fire, he couldn't help but think about the kiss he'd almost shared with Onyx in his Jeep. He wanted to feel his lips on hers again, to feel the softness of them. Frustration built inside him as he thought about what Will had interrupted. He wanted to kiss Onyx again, but he wasn't sure he'd be able to find the right moment. He didn't want to just kiss her casually in front of Will and Layla. Although they would think nothing of it, he knew it would be a big deal to him and Onyx. He didn't want to ruin whatever chances he may have with her. Was it possible that she was beginning to be interested in him for real? He pulled out some bags of chips for people to snack on while they waited for their dinner to cook. He'd even grabbed one from the healthy section of the grocery store. They had a bunch of vegetable roots turned into chips. He thought they looked disgusting, but he imagined that Onyx would like them.
"What are these doing here?" Onyx asked, picking up the bag. "Don't tell me you like these."
I don't. Well, at least I don't think I do. I've never tried them, but I thought you might like them."
"They're my favorite. I can't believe you would do that for me."
"What do you expect?" Will asked, smacking Taylor on the back. "When you're dating Dr. Roberts, you get the best." Only they weren't dating. He hoped it wasn't a turnoff to Onyx that he'd gotten them. Did it look like he was trying too hard? He didn't want to do anything awkward again. Onyx walked up to him and put her arms around his neck. His breath caught. What was she doing? His heart raced in his chest. She was so close to him. He'd begun to get used to the exotic incense smell that always seemed to cling to her.
"It was really sweet of you to think of me."
Her nose brushed his. Oh, merciful heaven above. He wanted to kiss her so badly. But it still didn't seem like the right time. At least not considering that he hadn't really given her a proper kiss yet. At least not a non-awkward kiss. A movement from the corner of his eye caught his attention. Layla had walked up to Will and was kissing him. It was like she fully expected Taylor to be kissing Onyx, and decided she wanted a kiss of her own from her man. But Taylor wasn't lucky enough to kiss Onyx. He wanted to with every fiber of his being, but it felt strange with Layla and Will standing right there. It was stupid because that hadn't stopped him before, but for whatever reason, he was chickening out now. Maybe there was more at stake now. He really didn't want to rush things too fast with Onyx and make things weird between them, even though she'd told him it was okay to kiss her while they were fake dating. He stepped away from Onyx. Frustration crossed her features. She moved closer to him.
"Kiss me, you idiot."
Did she really want him to kiss her? Or was she just putting on a show for Will and Layla? He didn't know. But he wasn't going to stop to contemplate it either. He had a woman to kiss. He leaned in and hungrily took what was being offered to him. Her lips were tender and so perfectly soft. She tasted sweet, like strawberries on a spring morning. She tightened her arms around his neck, pulling him toward her like she was asking him to deepen the kiss. He was more than happy to oblige. He felt himself getting lost in her kiss, and once again, just like the first time he kissed her, time stood still. He lost all sense of where he was and who might be watching. All he knew was Onyx and her silky, soft golden hair and her satin skin. Her full lips felt like magic beneath his, and he didn't want the moment to stop. Then he heard someone clearing their voice, and he turned to see Layla watching them with an amused expression on her face.
"You two are kissing like you're never going to see each other again. It's okay. You're not running out of kisses anytime soon. They'll still be around tomorrow.
But Taylor didn't know if he could get a kiss from Onyx tomorrow. What if she never let him kiss her again? He could feel his heart entwining with hers, and he worried that he was falling too fast for the wrong girl. After all, wasn't Onyx the one who said she wasn't ready for another relationship?
Chapter 12. Onyx's head spun from her kiss with Taylor. His body felt rock hard beneath hers. She heard somewhere that orthopedic surgeons had to be strong to work with bones. It took a lot of upper body strength. Onyx blushed from Layla's teasing. She'd gotten a bit carried away with her kiss, and hadn't thought about what Layla might think about the level of passion their kiss held. This went beyond acting for her. She felt the kiss deep within her soul, and she ached for more. She didn't know what it meant for her and Taylor, but she knew she was in deep trouble. She couldn't allow herself to fall for Taylor like this. She wasn't ready to be in another relationship. Just because a guy showed up in front of her who wanted to kiss her and was jaw-droppingly hot didn't mean she was suddenly ready to start dating again. It was tempting, but she was stronger than that. She couldn't let herself give in to that temptation. She owed it to herself. She pulled away from Taylor. She couldn't allow herself to get this close to him again. She knew it wasn't realistic to follow through with that, since they were fake dating. But she could keep him at arm's length as much as possible, especially when no one else was around. She went to the picnic table and opened the bag of chips. She needed some comfort food. Layla took a seat next to her on the bench and dug her hand in the bag after Onyx.
I haven't had these chips in forever,
Layla said.
Ever since I've been dating Will, my diet's gone downhill. Have you noticed that happening to you?
Not really.
How do you have the willpower to eat clean when Taylor is constantly around you eating junk?
Onyx shrugged. I'm used to it. Remember, I live with Sully. All she eats is junk. After you've been eating clean for this many years, you don't crave junk anymore.
Well, my diet is wrecked,
Layla said.
It all started with a slice of chocolate cake.
You can't blame me you ate that cake,
Will said.
I wasn't standing behind you twisting your arm.
Taylor is really good about helping me have healthy options available when I'm with him. He hadn't really until today, but she didn't want Layla to know how little time she'd spent with Taylor. Since they weren't really dating, they only had to show up to events once in a while together to keep Dylan satisfied that they were still together. The only reason they kept seeing Layla and Will was because they kept inviting them to hang out. Layla was just so thrilled that her best friend now had a guy, and they could all hang out together.
Aw, that's so sweet of Taylor that he wants to help you stay healthy. I'm so far gone now, I don't think Will buying me the healthy chips would help at this point.
Taylor's surprising me with something vegan in my tinfoil dinner tonight.
Taylor,
Layla called out to him.
Did you hear that?
What?
He looked up from where he was tending the fire.
Your woman over here is bragging about how awesome of a boyfriend you are.
She is.
I told her you're surprising me with a vegan dinner tonight, Onyx said.
That's true. I put yours on the outside so we would know which dinner is the vegan one. All the rest are different.
The sun went down, and Onyx felt like it was taking forever for the tinfoil dinners to finish cooking. She'd eaten about half the bag of healthy chips. What a joke. They weren't that healthy if you still binged on them. She always ended up doing that, too. Technically, the regular potato chips were vegan, too, but she tried to avoid them since they weren't all that nutritious. And the oil they were cooked in wasn't healthy. She downed a water bottle when Taylor, bent over the fire, declared it was time to check to see if dinner was ready. He pulled one of the silver packages out of the fire with a pair of tongs he must have brought from his barbecue grill at home.
Let's see what this looks like.
He unwrapped it and poked around at the potatoes.
Are those soft enough?
Will asked.
Looks like it,
Layla said.
I'm starving,
Will said.
That's one of the drawbacks to tinfoil dinners. They take forever to cook.
but the end result is worth it.
Layla said.
You can't beat that campfire flavor.
Onyx had to agree. She was eager to see what Taylor had come up with for her. He pulled her dinner from the fire and brought it to the table where he placed it on a paper plate. Okay, now's the big moment.
Drum roll, please.
Layla banged her hands on the table for effect. Taylor opened the foil gingerly.
Ouch, the sucker's still pretty hot.
He got the package opened, and inside was a mixture of what looked like sweet potatoes, black beans, and corn.
You'll need to salt and pepper it. I forgot to do that back at the house, but I do have some with me in case anyone felt like they needed a little more seasoning.
This is amazing, Taylor. Onyx felt her smile widening. Thank you so much for going through the trouble of making me my own special food. I swear I don't mean to be the high-maintenance girlfriend.
You're not high maintenance.
He kissed the top of her head.
It wasn't any trouble at all. I like cooking new things anyway.
Maybe I can introduce you to a few of my favorite recipes.
His face blanched, and she remembered the conversation they'd had at Josie's coffee shop, when he told her he was a picky eater and wouldn't want to eat anything other people thought was gross. I won't teach you anything too weird, I promise. Some of the recipes are really good. Even Sully likes them.
Her mango salsa is to die for,
Layla said.
I don't know,
Taylor said.
I'm not the biggest salsa eater.
Taylor doesn't like vegetables.
It's not that unusual of a thing,
he said.
Lots of grown men don't like vegetables.
Hey, no need to get defensive about it, Onyx teased. I'm not here to judge. I'm the one with the pickiest food preferences. I'm just picky in a different way.
And we don't judge you for that either,
Taylor said.
You can be as picky as you want.
Onyx couldn't believe how cool Taylor was being about her decision to be vegan. Wyatt had hated it and continuously pressured her to start eating the way he wanted.
I'd really appreciate that, Taylor. You really have scored a good one here,
Layla said.
Remember what a jerk Wyatt was to you about how you ate?
I was just thinking about that, Onyx said.
He was a nightmare.
Well, I'm glad you finally have Taylor in your life. You worked so hard to heal from what Wyatt did to you. You deserve a good guy after all this time.
Onyx could only wish that were true. She hadn't worked hard enough to deserve a guy like Taylor. He was amazing. She couldn't deny that. But he deserved a girl who could give him her entire heart. Not one that was still pining after her abuser. What was wrong with her anyway? Couldn't she recognize that he was toxic and horrible for her? Why would she still daydream about him from time to time? Although she'd noticed that she'd been thinking about Wyatt much less than normal since she started fake dating Taylor. She didn't know if that was a sign of anything specific, or if it was just a fluke. But maybe, just maybe, Taylor was helping her to heal. She wasn't going to rule that out, at least. She really did like Taylor. Maybe, over time, she could find a way to heal enough to deserve him. Just then, a loud baying came out of nowhere, and Onyx jumped to her feet. What was that? The sun had gone down, and her eyes weren't adjusted to the darkness since she'd been staring at the fire. Along the fence line, she could make out a strange figure standing there, staring at them.
I think we have a visitor,
Taylor said. Will grabbed his flashlight and shone it on the shape standing by the fence. A gray, furry donkey stood there. Hee-haw! The donkey made the baying noise again.
Did hee-haw just say hee-haw?
Taylor asked.
Who's hee-haw?
Layla asked. That's the donkey's name, Onyx said.
Like the TV show?
You know about Hee-Haw?
Taylor asked. Onyx laughed. Now we definitely need to look up that show on the internet.
Think Hee-Haw will let me pet him?
Taylor asked. Go for it, Onyx said. Just don't let him bite off your fingers. I heard that donkeys like to bite. Taylor hesitated.
Really?
I have no idea. I just made that up.
I think I'll take my chances.
He walked up to Hee-Haw and began petting his long nose. Onyx followed him over there. She reached out a hand and touched his fur.
Oh, he's sweet. It's too bad it's dark. I'd like to meet him in the daytime.
Well, maybe he'll come hee-haw at us in the morning.
Think we ought to take him along with us when we go off-roading?
Taylor asked. Onyx giggled. If you can convince him to climb in your Jeep. He's not a dog, Layla said, coming up behind him. Hello, hee-haw, she cooed. Oh my goodness, I love him already. Will, she called over her shoulder. Can we get a donkey after we get married?
Have you lost your mind, woman?
Layla laughed. Come on, baby. We can keep it tied up by the river.
You can't just tie up a donkey and expect it to be happy. He'd need a place to roam and graze.
Oh, you spoil sport. I guess you have a point there. But you have enough land. You could just build a fence.
No donkeys.
Pretty please. I promise I'll take care of it every day.
I hope you're kidding.
Layla laughed. You know I'm just messing with you. I don't really want a donkey, but it was so much fun to see your reaction. I couldn't resist.
Hee-Haw sneezed, and snot flew all over Onyx.
Oh, gross.
She wiped at the slime that covered her hair. She went back to the picnic table to get the wipes. Why did she keep getting gross today? It was the second time she had to wipe something disgusting from her hair. And of course, she didn't bring any shampoo with her. She wasn't even sure this campground had any showers.
Chapter 13. They settled on the picnic table and looked up the Hee-Haw TV show. They watched videos of it online and ended up laughing and laughing. "What y'all laughing at over here?" A voice called from the edge of their campsite. Taylor clicked on his flashlight and shone it on the person speaking. It was an old fat guy with a long gray beard, wearing a straw cowboy hat and nothing but whitey-tighties and cowboy boots. His hair-covered belly hung over his underwear so much they could barely see the whitey-tighties. I think you forgot something there, buddy," Taylor called over to the guy. That was when he noticed the man had a bottle of beer in his hand. "I heard y'all over here laughing. It kind of woke me up, but that's all right. I thought I'd come over and join y'all's party." "We're watching Hee-Haw. You look like a fellow who might enjoy the show," Taylor said. "You want to come watch it with us?" The man's caterpillar eyebrows knit together. "That show was inspired by aliens." Was this guy one of those redneck conspiracy theorists? "I should know. I was abducted by aliens back in 1972.
Taylor? Onyx whispered. I don't think it was the best idea to invite that guy over here to watch Hee-Haw with us. Maybe you ought to find a way to uninvite him.
"I'm Herbie Scroggs." He reached his hand out, and Taylor shook it. His hand was sticky. Taylor wiped it off on his pants, but that only made his pants sticky too. Herbie came over and sat right between Taylor and Onyx. He had a pungent smell about him. Taylor couldn't quite describe it. It was like nothing he'd ever experienced before. The closest thing he could think of was his Uncle Jerry after he got released from the mental ward, and he always smelled like peanut butter and athlete's foot. Herbie looked Onyx up and down in a creepy way. "Well, what's your name there, little lady? You sure are pretty." Before she could answer, Herbie reached down into his boot. "Is anybody hungry?" He pulled out a block of cheese and a pocket knife. "This here's the best cheese you'll find east of the Mississippi. It's a rare delicacy. Donkey cheese. I made it from Hee-Haw's milk. When I was abducted in 1972 by the aliens, they taught me how to make it.
You mean Hee-Haw's a girl? Onyx asked.
Herbie hooted and hollered. I'm just kidding. I got this cheese at the grocery store. Hee-Haw's a boy. Who ever heard of donkey cheese?
Onyx had a puzzled look on her face. Do you always keep cheese in your boot?
Well, I sure do. You never know when you need food. I always want to be prepared. Who knows? I might have to leave in the middle of the night. There could be a fire or something. I always have cheese in my boot.
He reached down in the other boot.
I have crackers here, too. Anyone want some?
No, thanks, Onyx said. I'm a vegan.
A vegan? You mean one of those crazy people who never eat meat? Who could just live off broccoli and beans? Why, I'd stink up the entire planet if I ate nothing but broccoli and beans all day long. Oh, and cabbage. Woo-wee! That's the smelliest.
Taylor was getting tired, but he couldn't figure out a way to get rid of this guy. He wasn't about to abandon Onyx with him. He decided to be direct with the man. Well, kind sir, we've got to call it a night.
I've got to go feed pigs in the morning,
Herbie muttered to himself. He stood up and headed out of the campsite, and Taylor could finally breathe normally again. He was getting tired of breathing through his mouth. Herbie turned around and looked at the group.
Y'all want to keep this here cheese in case you get hungry in the night? I have extra back in my cooler.
That's awfully nice of you, Layla said. But we have our own cooler full of food. We even have cheese, too.
Well, I thought I'd do the polite thing and offer anyway.
Have a good night, Will called out to him.
You too, Sonny.
I'm headed to bed, Taylor said.
You really mean that?
Layla asked. Yeah?
I thought you only said that to get rid of that guy.
That too.
Why?
Will said.
I liked him. I was about to try some of his donkey cheese.
Gross, Will, Layla said, playfully shoving his shoulder. Onyx giggled.
I guess it's that time, huh?
Layla said to Will.
Yep.
I hate saying goodnight to you. Taylor knew from talking to Will that he and Layla had decided to wait until marriage to sleep together. Layla and Will acted like it was about to kill them to be apart from each other. The rest of the trip went by uneventfully. They had energy bars for breakfast, and Hee-Haw and Moon Pie came to visit them in the morning. They saw Herbie out there shoveling hay. They weren't sure if he was the owner or just a permanent camper who worked off his camping fee by feeding the animals. They loaded up their vehicles and headed to do their off-roading. When they were heading back to Maple Creek, Taylor asked Onyx how she liked the trip.
Off-roading was so much fun. I had no idea I'd like it so much.
Maybe he had more in common with Onyx than he'd realized.
My favorite part was kissing you,
Taylor admitted. Onyx was quiet for a moment.
That was pretty nice.
Do you think maybe we could do it again? Taylor asked.
You mean you don't want to put on a show?
I mean, I'd like to kiss you because I want to. Not because I need to fool someone into thinking I'm dating you.
Are you saying you want to make things real?
I'm thinking about it. Onyx was quiet for a long moment. How do you feel about it?
I don't know, Taylor. I feel torn.
How so?
I really like you. I'm surprised by how well we get along. I can actually see a way for us to work out.
Then what's the problem?
I'm the problem. You deserve better than to be with someone who's still hung up on some other guy.
You're still hung up on Wyatt?
Yes and no.
Explain.
I know he's awful for me, but I keep remembering all the good times I had with him.
Don't the bad times outweigh the good?
They do, but the good times keep coming back to haunt me.
Have you tried replacing your good memories with other good memories?
I hadn't thought of that,
Onyx admitted.
think about this weekend. Now you have other good memories you can think about when your memories with Wyatt creep up on you. You just have to remember Hee-Haw and Herbie coming over to share his donkey cheese with us." Onyx laughed. "That was the weirdest camping trip I've ever taken. And now you have the memories forever. Instead of thinking about Wyatt, I'm going to think about Hee-Haw." She giggle-snorted like the idea cracked her up. "Exactly. Who knew Hee-Haw was going to be so helpful?" she said. "Both the donkey and the show." "That show really is hilarious. But, yes, both the donkey and the show. And Moon Pie. What a sweet old cow." "We can't forget about Moon Pie." "Definitely not," Onyx laughed. "You sound like you're feeling better." "This is the best I've felt in a long time." "I'm glad to hear it." "I've been sad for a long time, Taylor." "Let's change that. Consider me the head of your cheering up committee." "That's really sweet of you. How did I end up with you again?" "Are you saying you want to be with me?" "I'm willing to give it a try. I can't promise the best results, though." "Well, I could say the same thing. You know I've never had a girlfriend, right?" "Do you think that's going to be a problem?" Onyx sounded a little wary. He hoped that wasn't a bad thing. "I don't know. I've always been too focused on school and starting my career to worry about being with anyone." "And now you feel like it's time to change that?" Onyx asked. "I do. If you're willing to put up with my lack of relationship experience, I may do some really dumb stuff." "I can handle you doing dumb stuff, Taylor. What I can't handle is abusive behavior." "You shouldn't have to ever handle that. I wouldn't want you to." "But what if I get spooked or triggered and everything blows up in our faces?" "Then we deal with that when it happens. And I'm saying when, not if." "You mean there's 100% chance we're going to mess this up?" "Don't all relationships have their ups and downs?" "I guess so." "Then I would assume ours wouldn't be any different. We're human beings, Onyx. It's okay if we make mistakes." "I'm just concerned that I'm not going to be healed enough to be ready for something like this." "You have to start somewhere. You'll only know if you aren't healed enough if you try things out. How else can you find out?" "I don't know. I just kind of thought I'd wake up one day and it would feel right." "What if you never wake up feeling that way?" "I hadn't thought of that." "You could end up spending the rest of your life alone." And the thought of that sounded unbearable to hear.
Chapter 14. Onyx was tired. She leaned against the Jeep's passenger side window. She'd had a long day, and it was growing dark outside. They'd stopped off to eat. Onyx was grateful they'd picked a place with veggie burgers. "You know, my mom is ending up spending her life alone."
She still has lots of years left in her life. She may still end up with someone,"
Taylor said.
"That's true, but it's weird to think about. I could end up with stepbrothers and sisters."
"That could have happened when you were younger."
"I'm glad it didn't. I think that would have been hard on me. I'm glad my mom stayed single. We had her crystal shop. We weren't rolling in dough, but she made enough to keep a roof over our heads. I was worried for a while that my mom would remarry a guy who would end up being worse than my dad."
"What's your dad like?"
"Controlling. At least, he was, until he got tired of us and took off. I don't know what he's like now. I never talked to him. Last I heard, he lived in Seattle with some woman. As far as I know, they got married."
"That's rough."
"Yeah, a lot of my fear of men comes from him. I just think all relationships are gonna turn out like the way my parents did. Because I grew up watching my parents fight, and ultimately split up."
"I can see why your parents' divorce would have a negative impact on your view of relationships in general."
I always had a glowy outlook on marriage, but my parents have been happily married for a long time." "That's incredible."
I have always put relationships on the back burner. I figured that when I settled down, it would be something pretty serious.
Then why me?
I can see myself with you.
How? We're so different.
That's okay with me. We aren't as different as you might think. We both love long talks and nature and off-roading.
Maybe I need to stop focusing on our differences and look at the things we have in common.
Who said a couple has to have everything in common? I've always heard that opposites attract.
I've heard that too, but it never made sense to me.
Taylor glanced over at her.
We can find our own way to make sense of it. What do you say?
I'd love to, Taylor. As scary as it seems to me, I can't imagine myself taking that plunge with anyone else.
Onyx could feel herself falling for Taylor as she said it. The feeling was terrifying and freeing, all at once. She was taking a huge risk, putting her heart out there once again. She wasn't sure she fully trusted Taylor, but she was willing to take the first step forward with him and turn their fake relationship into a real one.
No more pretending?
Taylor asked, as though he'd been reading her mind.
No more pretending.
Does that mean more kissing?
Onyx laughed.
I sure hope so. You're an amazing kisser.
Thank you. I could say the same thing about you.
Onyx pulled up to Layla's parents' home. She'd planned Layla's bachelorette party with Layla's mom. She opened her trunk and pulled out a bag of spa supplies she'd picked up for the occasion. She grabbed a few other bags that had their snacks. She was excited for Layla's night with the girls, but she missed Taylor. She'd been spending every waking moment with him since the campout last weekend. Well, when she wasn't working, at least. She found the more time she spent with him, the more she enjoyed his company. He was easygoing and fun, exactly what she needed to feel more relaxed about life. She took her packages to the Bowens' home and knocked on the front door. Mrs. Bowen opened the door.
"Hey there, Onyx!"
She opened the door wider so Onyx could come inside.
"I brought treats." "Oh, you didn't have to do that. I have plenty of food we can offer to guests."
"I'm the maid of honor. It's my job to throw the bachelorette party for Layla."
"You can bring it in here."
Onyx followed her into the kitchen and unloaded the bags onto the countertop. She had a box of regular crackers, a box of healthy crackers, organic popcorn, and dark chocolate.
"I have some raw fruits and veggies I can cut up so we can have some healthier options."
"You know me so well," Onyx said. "I was planning on picking up some fresh produce from the store, but I ran out of time."
"It's good that I have enough then."
She opened a cabinet and pulled down a container of frosted cookies.
"I just picked these up from the bakery yesterday, so we can serve them too."
Perfect. The two women worked together to chop produce and arrange it on the trays that Mrs. Bowen had set out. The other bridesmaids and Layla would be arriving soon. The garage door opened, and Layla walked into the kitchen.
"The bride's here,"
Onyx called into the living room, where Mrs. Bowen had gone to lay out the masks and manicure kits that Onyx had bought. Layla took in the spread of food that covered the kitchen table.
"This looks fantastic."
"Thanks." Onyx put a stack of paper plates on the table next to the food. She filled a container with ice and water and sliced lemons Mrs. Bowen had given her to put in the water. She placed that on the table as well.
"Is there anything I can do to help?"
Layla asked. "I don't think so," Onyx said. "I'm pretty much done here. We're just waiting on the other girls to arrive." The doorbell rang.
"Sounds like someone's here now,"
Layla said. "Yep."
"I'll go grab it."
Layla disappeared into the living room. Onyx gave the kitchen one more glancing over and decided that she had everything done. She went into the living room to see who had shown up.
"Hi, Onyx."
Josie stood in the living room, her red curls down and loose around her shoulders. She had on a bright green shirt that looked fantastic with her hair. She settled onto the couch with Layla and the two of them started an animated conversation about their businesses. Onyx caught a flash of something passing the front window, and she went to the front door and opened it. Sully stood there with her hand in the air like she was about to knock.
"Oh, hi,"
she said brightly to Onyx. "Hey, come on in." Sully stepped in past Onyx and joined the party in the living room. Aubrey Wheaton was the last one to show up.
"Sorry I'm late,"
she said, crossing the threshold.
"I got caught up at work with a couple who was touring the Whitmore house to see if they wanted to book it for their wedding."
"No worries," Layla said. "We totally get it." It was true. All the women in the room ran a business, so she was in good company. They were a talented bunch, strong women who worked hard to make their dreams a reality.
"Have we picked out a movie yet?"
Sully asked. "I was thinking 13 going on 30, Onyx said. She knew it was one of Layla's favorite movies.
"Yes,"
Layla said.
"How do you know me so well?"
Onyx shrugged, happy that she'd gotten it right with Layla.
"So, how are things with Taylor?"
Josie asked Onyx.
"They couldn't be better. Taylor's a great guy."
Onyx felt relieved that she didn't have to lie to her friends anymore. Since turning her fake relationship into a real one, her life had grown much less complicated. No more pretending. She didn't have to worry if Taylor was feeling what she was feeling too.
"Are the wedding bells going to start ringing soon?"
Aubrey asked. Onyx laughed. "Very funny. We're still in the beginning stages. We'll see how things turn out. I can't give any guarantees, but so far the relationship has been great. Taylor's easy to be around."
"Not controlling like Wyatt?"
Sully asked. "Nope, he's not controlling at all." She hoped she wasn't speaking too soon. She still barely knew Taylor, and she knew abusers could pretend to be a good guy for a long time before they showed their true colors. She'd read a book about how to find a good guy to date, and it recommended trying the relationship out for at least 6 months before deciding whether the guy was an abuser or not. Most abusers couldn't keep up the facade of being a good guy past the 4 to 6 month mark. Eventually, their mask would fall off, and their true colors would start to show.
"I like him,"
Layla said.
"Will can't speak highly enough of him."
"That actually counts a lot," Aubrey said.
"Will has been friends with Taylor for a long time. He knows how his best friend really is."
"It's true. It's not like I'm dating some random guy off the internet that no one can vouch for," Onyx said, more to herself than anyone else. Although the relationship had gone smoothly so far, Onyx knew that they would have problems before too long, and she wasn't sure how she would be able to handle it. After what Wyatt and her dad put her through, she wasn't sure she could stay in the relationship if things began to get hard. She had way too many PTSD triggers for that. One wrong word from Taylor, and she could be taken right back to a moment from her relationship with Wyatt when it had gotten bad. She didn't want to end up in a fetal position on the floor.
Chapter 15. For his bachelor party, Will had everyone come over to his place to go fishing. Will lived in a little cottage by the river. He had a couple of chairs by the water where he liked to sit in the evenings and digest what had happened during his day. Taylor had spent countless evenings sitting right alongside him. In some ways, he liked where Will lived better than his own place. Will's house was simple and small, but the land was picturesque. Taylor pulled up in his Jeep and climbed down onto Will's gravel driveway. Will was already down by the water. He waved Taylor over, and Taylor took a seat in one of his chairs. Will had his tackle box open at his feet, and he was fiddling with a lure. "How's it feel spending your last day as a free man?" Taylor teased Will. "It feels amazing. I'm ready to be a married man. You're not getting cold feet?" "Nope." Will cast his fishing line out into the water. "I'm going to grab my pole and join you," Taylor said. He headed back to his Jeep and unlocked it. He opened the back and pulled out his pole and tackle box. Dylan pulled up next to him in his truck and stepped down. "Oh, look who's here," Taylor said. "The loser of the bet." Dylan had a sour expression on his face. "You got those rubber gloves ready? If not, I could give you some. I have plenty hanging around my doctor's office." "You're hilarious, Taylor." "I got the girl, and I got out of diaper duty. That's a win-win situation for me." "Congratulations," Dylan said. "I hope you're happy." Somehow, it wasn't as fun shoving his victory into Dylan's face. Noah showed up in his vehicle and joined in the party. "You got your fishing stuff?" Taylor asked him when he stepped onto the gravel driveway. "Yep, I'm planning on catching my dinner tonight." "You never catch anything," Dylan said. "Good luck with that." "Well, I got new lures special for today, so my fishing luck is about to change starting now." "It's all right if you don't catch anything," Taylor said. "I never do anyway, but that doesn't stop me from having fun." "What's your vegan girlfriend think about you catching poor innocent little fish?" Dylan asked. "I don't know. We haven't talked about fishing." "I'm surprised you ended up with her. She's a little intense," Dylan said. "Well, I'm a little boring, so she spices up life for me." "Fair enough," Noah said. They gathered all their fishing gear and joined Will by the water. Dylan razzed him about losing his freedom like Taylor had just done. Chad pulled up on his motorcycle and parked it before getting off and approaching them. Chad was an ex-Marine who ran the hardware store with his dad. "How's it going?" he asked when he got close to them. "It's going," Will said. "Anyone catch anything yet?" Chad asked. "Nope," Taylor said. "I heard you broke up with your girlfriend," Dylan said. Chad's face darkened. Taylor wished Dylan hadn't brought it up. From the look on Chad's face, he could tell it was a sensitive subject. "Who broke up with who?" Dylan asked, clearly not getting the message that Chad probably didn't want to talk about it. "She broke up with me." "Ouch, that's got to hurt." "We weren't really right for each other," Chad said. "I can see that now." "How's it going with you and Onyx?" Noah said. "We're doing great. I think I'm starting to fall for her." "Better watch out, or you'll end up like Will, an old married man," Noah said. "It's not so bad. At least it's not now. I can't speak for marriage just yet, but I'll let you know how it goes when we get to that part," Will said. "Dylan, how's it feel to have lost that bet?" Noah teased, casting his pole. "I can't believe he actually convinced her to go for him," Chad said. "I thought Taylor had said she hated him." "That's what I thought," Will said. "But she clearly doesn't hate him now. And to think, we thought Taylor was too awkward to get a girl," Chad said, reeling in his fishing line and then flinging it back out into the water. "I told you I wasn't awkward." Taylor fixed a worm onto his hook and stepped out onto a stone to cast his line out into the water. His foot slipped on the wet moss, and he flew forward into water much deeper than he'd been expecting. He fell in over his head and then bobbed up to the surface. All his buddies were hooting and hollering. "No," Dylan said. "That wasn't awkward at all. Just keep proving us wrong." Taylor stood up, but got tangled up in Noah's fishing line. He fought to free himself and ended up with a hook lodged into his arm. "Ow!" "Hey, I think I caught something," Noah said. "Very funny." Taylor took 2 steps, only to get tangled in Chad's line as he was reeling in to get out of his way. "Seriously?" Taylor batted at the line. "This is ridiculous." "You're going to want to cut that hook to get it off of you," Will said, as Taylor stepped onto dry land. At least it was a hot, sunny day, and the water hadn't been cold. "That was refreshing," Taylor said. "Not awkward at all." "You mean you meant to belly flop into the water?" Noah asked. "Yeah, sure. I just wanted a little swim." "I have something back at the house we can use to get that hook out of you," Will said. He cut the line, and Taylor followed him into the house. Will helped him get the hook out, and then gave him a first aid kit so he could bandage up the cut. Most guys would have acted like it was no big deal, But Will was the chief of police and took it seriously when someone got hurt on his land, even if it was just a fishhook. When they came out of the house, they saw Dylan creeping around Taylor's Jeep suspiciously.
"What were you doing by my Jeep?" Taylor asked.
"Nothing. I was just grabbing a drink from my car."
"If I find even a scratch on my vehicle, you're in for it."
"You're going to try to take me out right in front of the chief of police?"
"No, but he's right here and witnessed you acting weird around my Jeep."
"Relax. Your precious Jeep is fine. I didn't scratch it."
The three of them returned to the water and kept fishing some more. Will had a table set up with some chips and a cooler of drinks. Dylan kept going over to the table, eating snacks. He ate so many that when Taylor went to grab some Lays, they were already gone.
"Why did you have to eat so much, Dylan?"
Taylor complained.
"I just burned 1,000 calories at the gym. I have to make 'em up."
"You should be eating protein after the gym," Taylor said. "Not potato chips."
"You're one to talk," Dylan said. "I just saw you with your hand in the bag, too."
"Are you grumpy?" Taylor asked him. "Not looking forward to diaper duty?"
"The bet isn't over yet. You have to at least keep her until the wedding's over,"
Dylan reminded him.
"What's that supposed to mean?"
Taylor asked.
"Is that some kind of a threat?" "I'm just saying she might get spooked off by the wedding festivities and decide to cool things off with you. That's all."
Dylan reeled in his fishing line.
"That's not likely to happen," Taylor said. "Girls usually get swept away in the romance in the air at weddings. She's more likely to be more in love with me than ever before."
Onyx hadn't told him that she loved him, but he figured he could still lay it on a little thick since the entire thing started out fake anyway.
"We'll see about that."
Something didn't sit well with Taylor. He didn't like the look in Dylan's eye, but he couldn't figure out what he was up to. By the end of the night, Taylor had caught 2 fish, and Will had caught 3. The other guys hadn't caught any. Taylor planned to put the fish in a disposable cooler he'd been keeping in the back of his Jeep for such an occasion. When he opened his car to get the cooler, he noticed a foul smell coming from his Jeep that hadn't been there before. He put the fish in the cooler and stowed his fishing gear in the back of the Jeep. Once again, he smelled something awful. The car had gotten hot in the afternoon sun, and whatever was stinking in his Jeep was baking in the heat. He kept his Jeep meticulously clean. He couldn't imagine what was causing that awful smell. He got into the front seat, and the odor overwhelmed him. He had to find the source of the stench. He started sniffing around like a bloodhound in his vehicle until he ended up with his face beneath the driver's seat. He reached under there and felt something squishy and round. He pulled it out and groaned. It was a poopy diaper. Dylan busted up laughing.
"Where'd that come from?"
"Let me guess. Your nephew with the stomach problems."
"You think I put that there? That's ridiculous."
"I don't have babies in my car, or even moms. This was clearly planted."
"You sure that wasn't your own?"
"I don't wear Buzz Lightyear pull-ups. It looks like it would fit your nephew." Dylan doubled over in laughter.
"You should have seen the look on your face."
"If any of this poop got on my carpet, you owe me a car detail." He picked up the diaper and threw it at Dylan. The pull-up hit him square in the chest, and it exploded. Wet, hot poop flew everywhere.
"Are you serious?"
Dylan said. "Oh, man, I'm so sorry. I didn't actually mean for it to come out of my hand. It was just a natural reaction."
"What kind of crap is that?"
"Well, apparently it's baby crap."
"You're gonna pay for this,"
Dylan said. "That's what you get for planting it in my car. Keep the poop at home next time."
Chapter 16. Onyx looked at herself in the mirror in the hallway of the Whitmore house. The blush bridesmaid dress looked fantastic with her blonde hair. The spaghetti-strapped gown came all the way down to the floor, in a soft, flowy chiffon.
Her ears and throat sparkled in the light overhead. At the end of the bachelorette party, Layla had given all the bridesmaids matching cubic zirconium earrings and necklaces so they would be coordinated with their dresses. "Hey, Onyx," Sully called out. She had her jet black hair down in loose waves. Onyx wasn't used to seeing Sully with her hair down. Sully was a tomboy and preferred to keep her hair in a messy bun. "Dude, those guys looked so hot in their tuxes. This is going to be a very good day." Onyx laughed. "I've been dying to see Taylor all dressed up." "Girl, you know he cleans up well. Who can resist a doctor in a tux?" Sully fanned herself, and her laughter bubbled up. Her laughter was so contagious, Onyx couldn't help but giggle with her. Sully was like that. When Onyx was going through the darkest moments after her breakup with Wyatt, Sully never ceased to cheer her up. Aubrey came down the stairs in her bridesmaid dress. "I'm not used to being one of the bridesmaids for a wedding at the Whitmore house. I'm always the one running around with a pencil skirt on, shouting orders at people." "You don't shout orders," Sully said, thinking about it for a moment. "Oh, wait. Yeah, you do." "Okay, it's more like barking orders," Aubrey said. "How do you like working here?" Onyx asked. "I love it. Weddings are just so romantic. And there's always good food around." "Everything's so pretty here," Onyx said, looking around. "And I know what you mean about working with weddings. That's basically all I do all day long." For so long, her own wedding had seemed like an impossibility. But now, she was beginning to picture a life with Taylor. Could he be the one? Was she really finally over Wyatt? "I'm going to go check on Layla to see if she needs anything," Onyx told them. She traveled up the grand staircase to the second floor where the bridal room was. She knocked on the door, and she could hear a soft, "Come in," through the door. She pushed open the door to see Layla sitting at the vanity, putting on her makeup. "You look gorgeous," Onyx said. "Stand up. Let me look at you." Layla set down her mascara and scooted back from the vanity before standing up. The vintage lace gown clung to her curves in a flattering way before flowing out at the knees. "Those alterations came out perfect," Onyx said. "You couldn't have picked a better dress. This one just screams your name. Well, screams might be a bit harsh of a word. More like sings." "Thank you. It fits your body like a glove." "Am I really getting married today?" Layla asked. "I feel like I'm dreaming. Everything has been so perfect." Hopefully it stayed that way. She wanted all the good things for her dear friend. Would Onyx find her happily ever after with Taylor? Was she really ready for this relationship? "It's time to line up," Aubrey said from the door. "Okay," Onyx said. "I'll be right down." "I'm pretty much finished here," Layla said. "If there's anything else you need, let me know. I'm here to make your day go by more smoothly. Don't forget that," Onyx said. "You're an amazing friend," Layla said. "I'm going to head down there now." "I'll be right behind you," Layla said. Onyx got in line next to Taylor. "Hey," she smiled up at him.
"Fancy meeting you here."
"What a strange coincidence," Onyx said. "How did the bachelor party go?"
"Let's see,"
Taylor said.
"I slipped and fell into a river, got tangled up in a fish line, and got a fish hook in my arm."
"Ouch."
"And the icing on the cake was the poopy pull-up Dylan planted in my car, thinking he was so hilarious."
"What? That's gross. I can't believe we're talking about this right now. We're at a wedding, Taylor."
"Well, you asked."
"Hey, wait," Onyx said. "We're at a wedding. That means my mom can get her booth for her crystal shop at the fall festival. We won the bet."
"She knew about the bet?" Dylan asked. "That seems like cheating to me."
"Oh no, was I not supposed to say anything?"
"How do we know you two aren't faking this entire thing just so you can get me to change the poopy diapers?"
"We really are together, Dylan," Onyx assured him. "I swear it."
Why would you date him if he told you he'd made a bet about getting a girlfriend by the time the wedding rolls around?
Onyx felt the color draining from her face.
I knew it, Dylan said. I knew there was something fishy going on about you two dating so fast. That guilty look on her face says it all.
You can't prove that, Onyx said. But we can prove it. If this is fake, then we'll end up breaking up soon after the wedding. But it's not, so you can be sure this relationship is staying solid.
Layla came down the stairs, and the wedding music began to play. Aubrey had one of her employees tell them when to go next, as they walked down the aisle, since she was busy marching down the aisle on Chad's arm. Layla joined them at the back of the line behind Taylor and Onyx.
Nice of you to join us,
Taylor said.
Don't you clean up well?
Onyx smacked him. No hitting on the bride.
I'm not hitting on her. Just paying her an honest, friendly compliment. I'm allowed to. I'm the best man.
Oh, sure. You now have full license to flirt with your best friend's bride.
Shh!
Aubrey's employee gave them the stink eye.
I think we're ruining their production,
Onyx whispered to Taylor.
We'd better be quiet before we get into even more trouble,
Taylor said, keeping his voice low. Onyx couldn't hold back the giggle that bubbled up from within her, and that earned her another dirty look from the employee. Before she knew it, it was their turn to walk down the aisle. The wedding was beautiful, and everything Layla had said she'd wanted. Onyx couldn't help but get swept away with how romantic everything was. Her inner little girl was squealing with glee. After Layla and Will were officially married, they all walked back up the aisle and congratulated the bride and groom. The photographer then took pictures with the happy couple, and Onyx wandered around, looking for Taylor. He'd seemed to have disappeared.
Hello there, Onyx.
She heard the voice coming from behind her, and she froze, her heart stopping. She would know that voice anywhere. It had visited her dreams and daydreams for the past 2 years. She spun around. Wyatt. He looked good. He had on a navy suit with a pink tie. All classiness. She knew Wyatt wasn't naturally gifted with being stylish. He worked hard to study fashion trends so he could fit in. That was the thing about him. As hard as he tried, he never quite fit in with the rest of the world. He was always slightly off. But he'd gotten so good at hiding it that it took someone close to him to be able to spot it. Her heart pounded in her chest. She'd kissed this man. She'd even thought about marrying him, although it was mostly because he'd been pressuring her, and she'd gotten tired of fighting against him. Whenever she was around Wyatt, she felt helpless to control herself. It was like she turned into this little remote control robot. He held the controller, and she had no choice to obey. "What are you doing here?" she asked him.
Dylan invited me. He said you told him you wanted to see me, that you've been having second thoughts about breaking up with me.
I don't know what to say. Whenever Wyatt looked at her, she felt herself hypnotized into doing whatever he wanted. How could she tell him she was with Taylor now, and she wanted nothing to do with him anymore? She was afraid he'd go into a rage.
I'm still in love with you, Onyx. I always have been, since I first met you. When I heard you were having second thoughts, I can't tell you how happy that made me. I could never find another girl as amazing as you. I've tried dating. No one comes remotely close.
That's really sweet of you. Was it, though? According to her therapist, sociopaths were pathological liars and couldn't be trusted. This sounded like more of the flowery gibberish Wyatt had spouted to her before. But she couldn't deny that she still felt an overwhelming pull to be with Wyatt. She remembered all those glowy golden moments they'd had together, the day he'd taken her canoeing out to an island, and they'd built a fire and dug their toes in the mud. Was it possible that he could change,
and they could get that time back together. Recreate those magical memories she'd longed for. Maybe he was an exception to the rule.
Who's this, Onyx?
She turned to see Taylor standing beside her with a concerned look on his face.
Her face grew hot. Had she been making a dreamy expression?
My name's Wyatt.
He reached out and shook Taylor's hand.
Wyatt?
He glanced over at Onyx like he wanted confirmation that this was the same Wyatt. She gave him a slight nod.
And you are?
Wyatt asked.
I'm Taylor.
A stormy look crossed Taylor's features.
What's going on?
Nothing's going on,
Onyx told him.
Wyatt just told me that Dylan invited him to the wedding. I didn't know he was going to be here.
I was under the impression that you wanted me here, Onyx,
Wyatt said.
Is that true?
Taylor searched Onyx's face, like it would contain the answer he sought. I'm completely surprised to see him here. I haven't talked to Wyatt in 2 years.
I have an idea of what's going on.
He turned to Wyatt.
We'll talk to you later.
Taylor led her away from Wyatt to a spot that was out of earshot.
What is it?
Onyx asked.
Dylan. He's trying to sabotage the bet.
You've got to be kidding me.
Onyx groaned.
Can't Dylan just accept the fact that he lost?
I'm not so sure that he did,
Taylor said.
What do you mean?
Onyx asked.
I saw the way you were looking at Wyatt. Do you still have feelings for him?
Taylor asked.
That's what I was afraid of,
Taylor said.
I don't think this is going to work out between us.
You don't mean that?
Onyx said, horrified.
How could she have messed everything up so massively? Why couldn't she control herself when she was around Wyatt?
You can't tell me you're over Wyatt. He comes walking back into your life, and you could be sneaking around with him behind my back.
I would never do that.
I don't know whether you would or wouldn't. All I know is the expression I saw on your face was of a woman in love. I've never seen you look at me like that.
You have to understand that Wyatt and I have a long history together.
I thought you were only together for a few months.
But I've known him for over 2 years.
Have you been in contact with him for those 2 years?
No.
Then I wouldn't really count that as part of your history. Unless you're saying you've been pining after him for the entire time. Is that what you mean?
Onyx bit her lip. She didn't know how to make this better. It felt like no matter what she said, everything got worse with Taylor.
I have a confession to make,
Taylor said.
What's that?
I've been feeling myself falling in love with you. And after I saw the look on your face when you were talking to Wyatt, I realized that love is one-sided. You don't feel that way about me because you're still wrapped up in him. And I get that, I really do. I don't judge you for it. You can't help how you feel. But at the same time, I don't think it's the right time for us to be together.
Onyx felt her heart fall to her feet. I understand.
She felt oh so heavy. How could everything that felt so perfect come crashing down all around her after one conversation with her ex?
Chapter 17. Taylor had officially lost the bet. After the wedding and seeing Onyx with Wyatt, he couldn't allow the relationship to continue. It just hurt too much to know that Onyx still had feelings for another guy. Not just any feelings, strong feelings. He deserved better than that. And she did too. She deserved time to figure out what was going on inside her heart. And that was more important than some silly bet. But, as much as he hated to admit it, that meant that he had diaper duty. He met up with Dylan at his sister's house 2 weeks after the wedding. She and her husband were ecstatic to find that they had free babysitting for the night. They both had a crazed look in their eyes as they walked out the door. 5 kids, 5 and under, including 2-year-old twins, was enough to make anyone go bonkers. Taylor was in for an interesting night. An adorable little boy toddled up to him. He looked to be just over a year old. Taylor bent down to his level. "Hi there, I'm Taylor. I'm going to be your babysitter with Uncle Dylan tonight. What's your name?" The cute little tyke didn't answer, but promptly bit him on the arm with a full set of teeth. "Ow! You've got to be kidding me!"
"That's Joseph,"
a voice called from the stairwell. He looked up there to see a little girl. Taylor figured she was the 5-year-old.
"I'm Isabel. Joseph likes to bite. Mommy says that's a phase. I tried to bite him back, but Mommy put soap in my mouth. I don't like soap. It's yucky. Joseph likes soap, though. We have to keep it up high or we find bite marks in it from Joseph. Mommy said the last time he ate half a bar of soap, he would have to get a stomach pump. But the doctor said it was okay, and he would just poop it out. My brother Gabriel poops a lot. He's the stinky one."
"Wow, you're quite the chatterbox. It's nice to meet you, Isabel."
Mommy tells me I like to talk a lot.
"Is that so?"
Daddy refuses to change Gabriel's pull-ups. After he threw up a bunch of times, Mommy said, "Okay, I'll change him." She says Daddy had a bad gag reflex, whatever that means. Do you have a bad gag reflex? Because now you're the one who's going to have to change Gabriel's poopy pull-ups.
A shrill cry of a newborn sounded from the family room. "I'd better go see what Uncle Dylan is up to." Dylan wandered through the messy kitchen. It looked like a tornado had recently blown through.
Baby Claire has colic. She's only 2 months old. Mommy says colic means she cries a lot.
Taylor stepped into the sunken family room and saw Dylan bouncing a tiny red-faced infant wearing a pink outfit. "Do you think she wants a bottle?" Taylor asked.
Claire doesn't like bottles. Mommy nursed her right before she left.
"We have a breastfeeding baby who won't take a bottle?" This was going to be a longer night than Taylor had anticipated. Dylan continued bouncing his little niece, but nothing he did could stop her crying. "How long did they say they were going to be gone?" Taylor asked.
"They're going to dinner and a movie."
"That could take at least 5 hours.
Maybe they'll pick a fast food restaurant."
Taylor looked around at the disaster of a family room. Not likely. They looked pretty eager to escape this place. My guess is they're planning to take their time.
"Uncle Dylan, I'm poopy."
A little boy Taylor assumed was Gabriel tugged on the hem of Dylan's shirt. "That's your cue, Taylor." Pain shot into the back of his knee, and he turned around to see that Joseph had just bitten him again. "Ouch!"
No, Joseph, no more biting,"
Isabel said. A horrific smell wafted up from Gabriel. It smelled like a cross between a decaying carcass and a rotten egg. A mix between dread and panic lanced through Taylor. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading for the past 2 months. "All right, buddy. Let's get you cleaned up." He looked around. "Where's the bathtub?"
"It's upstairs," Isabel said. "I'll show you."
He took Gabriel's hand, but the stubborn little fella didn't want to go with him.
"No bath."
"What do you need the bathtub for?" Dylan asked. "Just grab a pack of wipes and get it over with." "I've thought long and hard about this. I know what I'm doing," Taylor informed him. The back of his leg throbbed from where Joseph had bitten him. Come to think of it, his arm hurt too. That kid could bite hard. Gabriel still wouldn't budge, so Taylor had no other choice but to pick the kid up and carry him to the bathroom with Isabel leading the way. When he picked him up, fresh, warm poop leaked through his shorts onto Taylor's arm. He now understood why the dad had a gag reflex. Isabel pushed open the bathroom door, and the floor was littered with so many clothes that he could barely see the vinyl beneath. He put the poopy kid in the bathtub and stripped him down to his pull-up. He grimaced at the smell and tried breathing through his mouth the best he could. Dylan appeared in the doorway. Taylor could hear Claire wailing distantly downstairs. "Where's the baby?" "I put her in the swing." "You left her alone with the kid who bites?" Taylor asked. "They'll be fine." Dylan waved his hand like it was no big deal. "There's no way I'm missing this." Taylor clenched his jaw. After all the gloating he'd done to Dylan, he supposed he only deserved it.
"Woo-wee! That smells really bad," Isabel said. He slid the pull-up off the kid, and poop smeared down his spindly little legs. "Oh man, this really smells." He got the pull-up off and threw it in the trash can. He'd have to empty that later. It looked like it was about to overflow anyway. That was when he noticed that some of the runny fecal matter had dripped onto the clothes littering the floor. Maybe he could throw in a load of laundry after this. He pulled down the shower head and turned on the water. He adjusted the settings to the power spraying option. He used to work for a pressure washing company during the summers in between college semesters. He knew exactly how to clean up a messy surface. He turned the little kid so that his bottom faced the shower head, and he started spraying the poop off. Unfortunately, he wasn't standing behind the shower curtain enough, and poop started flying everywhere, including his face. Gabriel screamed, and Taylor realized he had the water way too cold. He fiddled with the faucet and ended up getting it too hot. Gabriel wailed.
"Test the water on yourself before you put it on the kid,"
Dylan said. "If you think you know how to do this better, then come do it yourself," Taylor retorted.
"Nah, I'm good."
Dylan had a good point. Taylor sprayed the water onto his hand until it was a comfortable temperature, and he turned the setting back to a normal showerhead spray. He hosed the kid down. Thankfully, Gabriel had stopped wailing and flailing about. He pumped a generous amount of baby shampoo onto a scrub brush with a long handle, and he used it to scrub the kid down from a distance. There was no way he was getting closer to the kid than he needed to.
"You're a doctor, and you can't even give a kid a normal bath?"
Dylan said. "This is a normal bath. I use one of these things every day." He missed Onyx in that moment. She would have loved watching Taylor struggle to watch these kids. He wondered if she would get over Wyatt. Would she really spend the rest of her life alone because of the hold he had over her? He hoped that wasn't the case. He wanted to be with her. The longer they were apart, the more he ached for her. He now had a giant hole in his heart where Onyx had been. He missed laughing with her and the fun they'd had with enjoying the small things life had to offer. Would they ever be able to get that back? There was a crash downstairs, and immediately a kid started howling.
"I'd better go see what that was."
Dylan darted down the stairs. Taylor rinsed off the toddler and wrapped a towel around his shoulders he found on a towel rack. It didn't smell particularly clean, but it was handy, and he didn't know where the clean towels were kept. And judging by the amount of towels he saw on the floor, he doubted there were any clean towels to begin with. "Isabel, show me where Gabriel's pull-ups are kept." "This way." She led him into a bedroom one door down from the bathroom. The room was decorated in bright colors with Thomas the Train on every imaginable surface. "Someone loves trains, huh?" "Train!" Gabriel said. Isabel opened a drawer and pulled out a pull-up. She waved it at Taylor like it was the American flag. "Here!" He helped Gabriel wiggle into the pull-up. He was glad the little guy wasn't fighting him anymore. It was like he'd given up fighting after that shower experience. I take it Gabriel doesn't like baths. "He hates showers even more," Isabel said. "Let's find some pajamas for this kid." "Here are his Thomas jammies." Isabel threw a pair of footy pajamas at Taylor. He tried putting the pajamas on Gabriel, but somehow they ended up getting all twisted up, and he couldn't zip them. After several attempts, he finally got them on the right way and was able to zip them all the way up. "Gabriel knows how to put on his own jammies." She couldn't have told him that before he tried putting them on the kid 6 different ways. The three of them went downstairs. Claire was still crying in her swing. Gabriel's identical twin brother sat in the middle of a giant pile of flour. "What happened here?" Taylor asked.
"Zeke decided he wanted to make pancakes while we were upstairs. He thought he'd get a head start without us."
"Lovely," Taylor said.
Mommy never lets him do that, but he always tries anyway.
Somehow Taylor would find a way to get through this night, even if it meant they turned on a Disney movie, passed out candy, and let the kids stay up as late as they wanted.
Chapter 18.
Onyx!
Sully passed the volleyball to her, and Onyx hit it over the net and scored.
Another point for our team,
Sully called out. The ball sailed back and forth over the net until her team had won the game. Onyx walked to the bleachers where she'd left her water bottle. She took a long drink and drained all the liquid. She wiped off her sweaty brow with a towel from her gym bag.
"Well, that was an awesome game,"
Sully said.
"We basically slaughtered them."
"Pretty much." She and Sully played volleyball every Thursday night. It had been a huge help in her journey to get over Wyatt. Sometimes, the best thing she could do was get out there on the court and work up a sweat, forgetting all about the man who had sucked the life out of her for the past 2 years. She missed Taylor horribly. Every day she relived the hurt that had crossed his face when he'd seen her with Wyatt. If her ex-boyfriend had never shown up at Layla's wedding, then she'd still be with Taylor, and he would never have found out that she still had lingering feelings for Wyatt. Her feelings honestly weren't that strong toward Wyatt. She knew that she was in love with the fantasy he created, not the man himself. Another game was starting soon, and Onyx was eager to make it out onto the court. The last thing she needed right now was to think about Wyatt again. She was determined to put her mind, body, and spirit into the game and just have fun.
"You okay?"
Sully asked.
"I'm fine." "What do you mean?" "You seemed sad a minute ago."
Onyx sighed.
"I miss Taylor." "Have you tried reaching out to him?"
"Yes. He won't take my phone calls anymore. He says he's given me space to figure out my feelings for Wyatt."
"It really stinks that Wyatt showed up to the wedding. What was Dylan thinking? Telling him that you still had feelings for him?"
Sully's eyebrows drew together like she was mad just talking about it. "Sometimes Dylan can be a real jerk." Sully stood up and did some stretches.
"You can say that again."
Onyx still hadn't told Sully about the bet. She didn't want her friend to know that they'd been lying to her at first. There was no point in telling her now. It just didn't matter anymore.
"You know, with as many volleyball injuries as you've gotten over the years, you should probably do some stretches,"
Sully said. Onyx had never gone to the doctor for any of the injuries she'd gotten. She'd been seen by a chiropractor once, and he told her she most likely had torn her ACL. She'd ended up doing a bunch of exercises the chiropractor had taught her. She'd avoided the doctor since she was a kid, and she wasn't about to break her long streak of not needing a doctor. She bent down and copied the stretch Sully was doing.
"It looks like it's time for another game to start,"
Sully said, before Onyx could get to her other leg. She shrugged and followed Sully onto the court. The game started out intense. This other team was much better than the first one had been, and Onyx had to give it her all. The ball sailed over the net, and Onyx leaped up to bounce it back to the other side. When she landed, she came down on her one leg badly and crumpled to the ground in pain. The referee blew a whistle, and Sully came to her side.
"Onyx, are you okay?"
"I think I tore my ACL again, but this time it's pretty bad."
"Can you stand up?"
"I'm not sure. I can try."
Onyx tried standing, but she couldn't put any weight on her leg.
"Here,"
Sully said.
"Let me help you."
She positioned herself under Onyx and helped her walk to the bleachers.
"Ow, it hurts so bad."
"I know you're not going to want to hear this, but you should probably see a doctor. I read that if you don't get your ACL treated, then you could end up just injuring it over and over, and eventually ended up with arthritis."
Onyx eyed her suspiciously.
"By treated, you mean surgery. I know all those doctors want is to cut into people. That's how they get paid, you know?"
"Why don't you go to Taylor, then? He won't go after your money. You can get an honest opinion from him."
"Oh, yeah, Taylor. He's an orthopedic surgeon, huh? This is what he does."
"Yep. Maybe he'll take pity on you and give you another chance,"
Sully said.
"You make me sound desperate."
"You're not desperate. You're just injured. Inside and Now on the outside, too. Gee, thanks. It's okay to be broken, Onyx. We're all broken in our own way. It's part of being human. Taylor doesn't seem very broken. He has the perfect life. You haven't seen him lately, have you? No. I talked to him at the grocery store last week. He didn't look too good. He's really torn up over the way your relationship ended. He is? Oh yeah, big time. Then why won't that numbskull answer my phone calls? He thinks it's hopeless, that you'll always put Wyatt before him. That's just dumb. Wyatt is nothing in my eyes compared to Taylor. But how can I let him see that if he won't give me a chance to tell him?
Sully looked down at Onyx's injured leg.
You always say that everything happens for a reason. Maybe you hurt your leg today because making an appointment for a knee injury is the only way you can get Taylor to talk to you right now. But what if he refuses to take me on as a patient? Taylor wouldn't do that if he knew you were hurt and needed help. Are you sure?
Onyx asked, looking down at her swollen leg. As much as she hated to admit it, she needed a doctor this time. She'd never had a knee injury this bad before. All the other injuries must have weakened her knee to the point of finally tearing.
Of course, I'm sure.
Onyx could only hope Sully knew what she was talking about. Onyx had no trouble getting an appointment with Taylor's office. She didn't know if it was because his secretary had booked her, and Taylor had no idea who he was seeing, or if Taylor had okayed the appointment. Sully fussed over her like a mother hen. She insisted that Onyx wasn't safe to drive since she didn't have the movement speed in her leg that she used to have. So Sully drove her to the appointment. Sully gave her a pair of crutches she'd had left over from her own knee surgery a couple of years ago. Onyx was glad because she had no desire to hobble around. She could put a little bit of weight on her leg, but she didn't want to take any chances. Things felt very unstable, especially if she needed to pivot for some reason. Sully helped her open the door to the office.
I'll just chill in the waiting room. I can play games on my phone while you're in there with Loverboy.
Onyx rolled her eyes.
Don't call him that,
she hissed.
His coworkers are all over the place.
Onyx checked in with the receptionist and then took a seat next to Sully while she filled out the paperwork.
Why do they need all of this information about me anyway?
It's none of their business. This is ridiculous.
Onyx, that's standard procedure when you're going to the doctor. If you acted like a normal person and ate normal people food, you'd get sick like the rest of us, and you'd end up at the doctor from time to time. Then you'd know how much paperwork the rest of us fill out. It's just pointless. I'm not even going to try to explain it to you.
Onyx scribbled through the stack of paperwork.
How did you end up with a doctor anyway?
Sully asked.
He's really hot, and a good kisser.
Onyx probably shouldn't have said that so loud. The receptionist was staring at her, and she was pretty sure she could hear everything they were saying. She was probably one of Maple Creek's finest in the gossip department, too. She had that look about her, the beady eyes with bright blue eyeshadow, a couple of chins, big, flashy purple earrings. Her perfume smelled like it came from the 1950s. She turned in her paperwork to the receptionist and sat down by Sully again. These days, it was an ordeal just to do that much. She was in pretty bad shape. She told her mom that night that she'd most likely torn her ACL, and her mom begged her to go into the doctor right away. A nurse opened the door and called out Onyx's name.
Good luck,
Sully called out to her.
I'll be rooting for you.
Onyx knew exactly what she meant by that. She wasn't referring to her knee getting better either.
She was rooting for her to get Taylor back. "We're going to go ahead and get you some x-rays first." "X-rays? Is that really necessary?"
"Are you pregnant?"
No. I'm just worried about being exposed to that amount of radiation."
"We can skip the x-rays if you want. But Dr. Roberts will have a much better idea of what's going on if we can grab some imaging."
"Fine."
Onyx sighed. She would just have to go on a detox diet after this to get all that radiation out of her system. She knew the nurse probably thought she was being ridiculous, but she didn't care. She'd never had an x-ray before. Okay, maybe she had when she'd gone to the dentist as a kid before her parents split up. But that was so long ago she could barely remember it. As it turns out, the x-rays were relatively uneventful, and were over before she knew it. The nurse led her back into the exam room and told Onyx to have a seat. She climbed up on the bed-like structure and stretched her legs out in front of her. She'd worn a pair of running shorts so Taylor could get a good look at her knee. She hoped he got a good look at the rest of her legs, too. She had to admit, she looked pretty good. Playing volleyball had kept her in good shape, not to mention the yoga and running that she did regularly. The door opened, and Onyx's breath caught in her throat. Dr. Roberts looked fantastic in his white lab coat. She had no idea what she should say to him. Would he be cold and distant? Or angry that she showed up at his office like this? Chapter 20. Onyx arranged the new shipment of crystals from the wholesale supplier on the shelf. Her mom had insisted that she didn't need help, but Onyx was antsy to get busy after sitting around for so long while recovering from her surgery. The summer was nearly over, and she hadn't heard much from Taylor lately. As each day passed, she missed him more and more. She'd given up on Taylor ever coming around to rekindle a relationship with her. Wyatt had tried to strike up several conversations with her, but she'd heavily avoided him each time. She finally ended up blocking him in every way that she knew. Even then, he still made new accounts to try to contact her. Will finally ended up helping her to place a restraining order on the guy. Now, if Wyatt tried to contact her, he would be in trouble with the law. Onyx placed the last of the citrine crystals on the shelf and turned to her mom. "Do you have any more inventory you want me to put out?" "I don't think so. I still don't think you needed to be in here working on your off day." "I wanted to spend time with you, and this was the only way we could see each other with the way our schedules matched up." Onyx picked up the box and carried it to the back room. "I'm sorry things didn't work out between you and Taylor." Onyx froze, and then slowly turned around to look at her mom. "What made you bring that up?" "I can tell it's been heavy on your mind." Onyx sighed. "It has been. I miss Taylor. Even though we didn't date very long, we had a powerful connection. I think of him every day. I don't know if I could ever have feelings like this for another guy." "Have you tried talking to Taylor lately?" "No. Not since my follow-up appointment after my surgery. But he was all business then." "Why don't you try reaching out to him again?" Onyx stared down at the floor. "I'm afraid he won't respond." "But if you don't, you'll wonder what might have happened if you'd taken that risk." "Mom." Onyx looked up at her. "I'm in love with him. I have been for a while, but I haven't been honest with myself, because I was so afraid of it turning into another situation like what happened with Wyatt. I knew logically that Taylor would never abuse me, but it was like my subconscious hadn't caught up to that reality yet." "And what about now?" her mom asked. "Well, I addressed it with my therapist. She said this reaction is a part of the PTSD I have from my relationship with Wyatt. She confirmed that my suspicions were true.
and we worked on it together through some techniques she's been trained to use.
Were you able to fix the problem you had?
Yes. Whatever problem my brain had doesn't seem to be bothering me anymore. I don't know if that's enough for Taylor, but it's the best I have right now.
I think you should be honest with him about your feelings. Tell him how hard you've been working to heal. If it were me, that would make a big difference.
The door to the shop opened, and Taylor came inside. Her breath caught. He looked amazing. He had on a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled up and tan pants. "Taylor?" Onyx said. "What are you doing here?"
Hi there, Onyx.
He looked nervous.
You look like you're doing well.
Onyx knew he probably wanted to ask her about her knee, but couldn't because of patient confidentiality. "My knee is feeling much better. I'm able to walk around now."
That's great to hear.
"This is my mom. I don't think you've met her yet, at least not officially."
Hello, Mrs. Sharp. It's great to finally meet you. I've heard so much about you from Onyx. She thinks the world of you.
I think the world of her, too. And it's great to meet you, too. Although, we've met before. You just probably don't remember it.
Oh, right. In line to get a booth for the fall festival.
That's right. Although we didn't really get a chance to speak.
That's actually what I came to talk to you about. I have this booth reserved in my name, and I heard you weren't able to get one. Is that still true?
Yes, it is.
That's good to hear, because I took the liberty of transferring my booth over to your name. I don't really need it, and I heard it was really important to you.
He pulled out a piece of paper and placed it on the counter next to the register.
Here's the confirmation page for the transfer.
Her mother turned the paper so she could see it.
This says it's paid in full. Would you like me to reimburse you for the cost? That won't be necessary.
Are you sure?
Quite sure.
Thank you. I feel very touched that you're willing to do this for me. He looked at Onyx.
I know it's important to Onyx.
Thank you, Taylor. That means a lot to me. Onyx smiled up at him.
And I came here to tell you something, Onyx.
What's that? She whispered.
I'm in love with you. I messed up big time. I never should have broken up with you. I'm the biggest idiot of all time. I don't care if you haven't fully healed from whatever happened with Wyatt, or if you still have feelings for him. I'm willing to stand by your side and work through your healing process with you. If you'll have me, I'll be here in the future to help you through whatever you need. That's what I should have done from the beginning.
Whatever feelings I had for Wyatt are dead now. I've seen over these past few months without you, it wasn't worth it for me to hang on to them. I wasn't ever in love with him, but I was clinging to the experiences I'd had with him, the fantasy world he'd built for me.
You're not in love with Wyatt?
No, I've blocked Wyatt in every possible way. I even got a restraining order out against him. If he contacts me again, he's in trouble with the law. Hope sprang on Taylor's face.
Does that mean you'll take me back as your boyfriend?
There's nothing I would love more. I'm in love with you too, Taylor. He stepped closer to her.
I've really missed you, Onyx.
She looked up into his eyes. I've missed you too. I've been in love with you for a while, but I was too afraid to do anything about it.
You've been in love with me all this time?
Taylor asked. Yes.
I feel like such an idiot for not reaching out to you sooner. But I was too much of a wimp and was too afraid to take a risk.
That's basically the same thing I was doing.
I finally decided to transfer the fall festival booth over to your mom. I wasn't expecting you to be here, though. And when I saw you, I knew I couldn't leave without telling you how I feel.
I'm glad you did. I was starting to get tired of waiting around, but I probably would have contacted you myself if you hadn't come in here today. I'm tired of living my life without you by my side. Taylor's eyes softened.
You won't have to do that anymore, because I'm here for you from now on.
Onyx felt a tug from her heart, beckoning her to be near him. She stepped closer and put her arms around his neck. I really do love you.
I love you too.
I'm never going to get tired of telling you that, she said.
I hope you don't.
I won't. You have my heart. I'm yours now. He bent down and kissed her tenderly. She didn't even care that her mom was standing there watching the entire thing play out from the sidelines, like a quiet spectator. She lost herself in his kiss. It was easy to be swept away when she had such powerful emotions flowing through her. She never wanted to be parted from Taylor from this day forward. She was willing to take that risk with her heart. She'd fight for love, no matter what obstacles came their way. Taylor was worth it. And she deserved a guy like him, even if he was her total opposite. Epilogue. Sully scooped butter pecan ice cream into a waffle cone and handed it to the elderly woman. Thank you, dear. Sully rang her up and smiled at the sweet woman who handed her the money. Here's your change. She gave the woman a $1 bill and a handful of coins. Have a nice day, Mrs. Everly. You too, dear. Aubrey Wheaton walked into 2 scoops and waved at Sully. Hey there. Hi, Sully. Aubrey grinned at her. Her red hair was swept back into a bun, and she wore a crisp white shirt and a pencil skirt. Did you just come from work? Aubrey leaned against the glass, looking at the multitude of flavors. I'm taking a break. I need ice cream. Want to sample anything? No. I want the fudge brownie. I'm in the mood for chocolate. A girl after my own heart. Give me 2 scoops in a cup. Sure thing. Sully slid open the case and scooped out some of the dark brown ice cream. I heard that Onyx and Taylor got engaged. That's right. It happened last night. News travels fast. My mom just saw Onyx at the grocery store with her new ring on. She called to tell me right away. Sully laughed. That sounds like your mom. That means you're going to be out of a roommate. Yes, I am. I'd love to fill the spot. Sooner or later, I'm going to need to move out of my parents' house. I'd rather move in with someone I know. I can understand that. I wouldn't want to live with a stranger either. Do you know when the wedding is? Aubrey asked. It's in April. Sully put another scoop in the cup. I can wait until then. Are you sure? Sully told her the amount. Aubrey swiped her debit card. I'm not in a big rush to start paying rent, but I like your apartment complex, and I know from talking to Onyx that you're great to live with. Sully handed Aubrey her cup of ice cream. Onyx said I'm great to live with? Yep. Oh, that's so nice of her. Oh, I forgot to mention something to you, Aubrey said. I'd like to start purchasing ice cream from you for the Whitmore House's catering. Would you be interested? I'd have to think through all that would entail, but I don't see an immediate reason why not. I like the idea of supporting a local business, especially one that my friend runs. That's so nice of you to think of me. I love the ice cream here anyway. I had a client request ice cream recently, and I thought of you right away. That's awesome. Were you able to convince Onyx and Taylor to book their wedding at the Whitmore House yet? I'm swinging by Onyx's wedding dress shop right after this to see if she wants to get her wedding reservation put together. I think she does want her wedding there. I seem to remember her saying something to me about it, Sully said. Aubrey beamed like that news made her happy. Aubrey took a seat at the table and started eating her ice cream. I heard Jackson is back in town now. I heard that too. He's teaching high school now. You should go for him, Aubrey said. He's perfect for you. Ex-military, all those muscles. Sully shook her head. He was my brother's best friend. I don't think he'd want to date me. Especially after Tyson died. There's just too much weirdness there. Plus, he probably just sees me as Tyson's little sister. You've been crushing on him forever, though. Aren't you tired of being single? Honestly, yes. As happy as I am that Onyx found her happily ever after, I wish I could find someone for myself. I just don't see it happening. I feel strangely left out. Like she got invited to a party and I didn't. I know that feeling. I work in the wedding industry. That's me daily, Aubrey said. Even if we stay single for life, we're gonna have fun doing it, Sully said. I can get on board with that idea, Aubrey agreed. Future roommates and future partners in crime. While the idea of having fun with Aubrey sounded great, what Sully really wanted was Jackson. She just wasn't sure he'd ever see her that way. Want to learn if Sully ever gets Jackson? Read her book to find out. About the author. Cindy Ray Hale loves to write rom-coms set in small towns and has been writing and publishing books since 2012, all the while laughing at her own funny stories. She is married to the sweetest guy and has a blended family with him consisting of 7 kids. She loves nerding out on video games, creating book covers, and drinking too much caffeine. When she can find a moment, she loves to sing and play the piano, and often includes acting and singing somewhere in her stories. She was born and raised in the hills of Tennessee in a large, crazy family, and as an adult, has moved all over the United States. She's finally settled down in a small town in the mountains of Western Virginia, where she loves to go hiking, boating, and dig in her garden. Want to be the first to know about a sale or a new release for Cindy's books? Visit www.cindyrayhale.com to sign up for her newsletter and get a free book. Are you a super fan or a book reviewer? Join Cindy's Facebook group, Cindy Ray Hale Superfans, to be the first to hear about new releases and the chance to get your hands on an advanced reader copy of one of her upcoming novels. Subscribe to her YouTube channel to listen to her books for free. At Cindy Ray Hale. This has been Kiss Me Baby One More Time, a sweet romantic comedy, Maple Creek Romantic Comedy Book 2, written by Cindy Ray Hale, narrated by Mari B. and John Brattin, copyright 2020 by Cindy Ray Hale, production copyright by Cindy Ray Hale.